Tonight we stand beneath a sky that feels older than memory itself. In 1880, during excavations among the ancient ruins of Mesopotamia, clay tablets began passing from dust into museum drawers, carrying signs pressed by hands that had vanished thousands of years earlier. Scholars at the British Museum and later researchers connected with Oxford, Yale, and the University of Chicago studied these wedge-shaped marks with patient care. They found accounts of kings, floods, offerings, stars, and strange warnings written in the calm language of temple record keepers. You are not entering a world of loud prophecy tonight. You are entering something quieter. A clay tablet rests before you, small enough to fit in 2 human hands, yet wide enough to hold a universe. Its surface is the colour of dried river mud. Its edges are chipped. Its signs look almost like bird tracks crossing wet earth, frozen at the moment of pressure. Somewhere in those marks, later readers have imagined star maps, omens, hidden calendars, and even a warning linked by modern voices to the year 2027. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the room grows still, right where you are listening from, and the local time outside your window, perhaps it is morning where you are, perhaps it is long past midnight. Either way, you and the ancient watcher are sharing the same habit. You are looking upward, or inward, wondering what the darkness means. The air around you becomes warm and dry. You can almost smell dust, clay, lamp smoke, and river reeds. The modern room softens at the edges. The screen before you becomes a doorway, and beyond it lies southern Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers once braided life through a plain of mud, barley, date palms, cattle, boats, and temples. You walk slowly into that ancient land. There are no glass towers here, no electric glow, no soft humming machines pretending to improve your sleep while stealing it politely. There is only the low breath of the river, the scrape of sandals, and the heavy silence of night settling over walls of sun-baked brick. The city is not sleeping completely. Cities almost never do. Even in the ancient world, someone is awake, someone is worried, and someone is being underpaid by history. Above you, the stars are frighteningly clear. They do not twinkle through city haze. They burn like cold lamps fixed into a black vault. The moon hangs over the plain with a pale authority, touching the roof lines, the temple steps, the courtyards, and the narrow lanes where dogs nose through the shadows. From the top of a stepped temple, a watcher studies the heavens. He's not a scientist in the modern sense, though modern science would one day owe something to his habit of counting. He watches because kings demand signs. He watches because crops depend on seasons. He watches because the gods, in his world, are not distant ideas. They are powers whose moods may be read in storms, birth defects, eclipses, dreams, and the slow wandering of planets. The sky is not scenery. It is a message surface, immense and merciless, waiting to be interpreted by those trained to endure its silence. Records confirm that Mesopotamian scribes developed complex traditions of celestial observation over many centuries. Scholars at the University of Chicago have long studied the tablets that preserve these omen traditions, where the appearance of the moon, planets, and stars could be linked to events on Earth. This is a mainstream historical fact, solid beneath the softer mist of tonight's story. Ancient Mesopotamians did not merely admire the heavens. They organized them, recorded them, feared them, and used them. That is where the unease begins. Because when a people writes down the sky for long enough, later generations begin asking whether those records contain more than observation. Did they preserve warnings? Did they encode cycles? Did they remember disasters so old that they became myth? And if a modern date like 2027 becomes attached to them, is that a discovery, a misunderstanding, or one more mirror held up to our own anxious age? You sit with that question gently. There is a fringe tidbit, strange and persistent, that often returns in modern discussions of Sumerian star lore. Some claim that ancient cylinder seals show unknown planets, secret visitors, or a solar system understood long before modern astronomy. One famous seal image has been treated by certain writers as though it were a hidden astronomical diagram. Mainstream scholars are far more cautious. They usually see divine symbols, artistic convention, and religious imagery, not a lost space chart. Still, the image survives in the modern imagination like a tiny coal that refuses to go out. It glows because humans love patterns. You know this already, even if you do not admit it before coffee. A few lights in the dark become a hunter, a boat, a bull, a goddess, a warning. A crack in old clay becomes a pathway. A number becomes a date becomes a fear, and a fear, when dressed in ancient clothing, can feel almost holy. Yet the ancient scribes were not foolish. They lived close to hunger, flood, drought, and invasion. They knew that the world could change quickly. A river could rise, a king could die, a field could fail, a city could become rubble while its gods remained silent in their sanctuaries. To them, watching the sky was not fantasy. It was practical, political, devotional, and deeply human. It was an effort to hear order within uncertainty. An open scholarly debate remains over how much of early Mesopotamian sky watching should be called astronomy and how much should be called astrology. Researchers at institutions such as Oxford and Yale have explored this boundary with care. The categories are modern, clean, and slightly smug. The ancient world was not so tidy. For the temple scholar, a lunar eclipse was both an observable event and a possible message. Measurement and meaning stood side by side, like two tired guards at the same gate. The tablet before you grows clearer. Its signs do not shout. They wait. Perhaps they record an omen concerning the moon. Perhaps they describe a ritual response to danger. Perhaps they preserve a list, a calculation, or a copy of an older copy made by a student whose hand cramped halfway through the line. There is something touching about that. Even mystery had paperwork. You lean closer. The claim about a warning linked to 2027 does not come from a simple sentence on a Sumerian tablet saying that a certain year will bring a certain fate. That would be convenient, and history is rarely so generous. Instead, the idea belongs to a modern web of interpretation, built from ancient star records, mythic king lists, disputed images, planetary speculation, and our current habit of searching the past for signals about the future. This does not make the ancient material empty. It makes it more haunting, because the real warning may not be a date. It may be the old human pattern of staring into the heavens during uncertain times, hoping the universe has left instructions. The Sumerians did it under a clean black sky. We do it under satellites, screens, and nervous headlines. Different lamps, same darkness. The clay tablet remains still, outside, in that imagined Mesopotamian night. The river moves with a slow animal sound. A reed mat rustles. Somewhere, a temple door closes. A scribe lifts his stylus, presses one more sign into wet clay, and leaves behind a mark meant for his own world, not ours. Yet you are here now, thousands of years later, reading his silence as if it might contain your future. Perhaps that is the true beginning. Not a prophecy, not final answer, only a small clay object beneath immense starlight, carrying the weight of human fear, human patience, and human longing. In its broken surface, you sense the first doorway into a hidden timeline, where the oldest cities look upward, and the heavens seem to look back. The city breathes heat even after sunset. You feel it rising from the walls, from the packed earth, from the broad courtyards where clay jars lean in corners like patient animals. The day has gone, yet its weight remains. Mud brick gives back the sun slowly. The streets glow faintly under moonlight, pale and dusty, and every surface seems touched by a thin powder of ancient labour. You walk where southern Mesopotamia spreads flat beneath the stars. The land is not the gentle green picture that later imagination sometimes paints. It is a difficult place, beautiful in a stern and practical way. Canals cut through the plain like dark veins. Fields of barley stand where water has been guided by human hands. Date palms rise near compounds and riverbanks, their fronds whispering softly when the night wind moves through them. Beyond the watered land, dryness waits with perfect patience. This is where cities learn to bargain with nature. Uruk, Lagash, Nippur, and Eridu rise from the plain as if the earth has pushed up memory in layers. Their walls are not merely defensive, they are statements. They say that humans have gathered here, stored grain here, argued here, counted here, worshipped here, and complained here with impressive consistency. Some habits appear very early in civilization. You pass through a gateway, the wooden doors are heavy, bound with metal fittings that feel cold under the fingers. A guard sits half awake near the entrance, listening to the night insects and pretending not to listen to the gossip of passing merchants. Somewhere nearby, a donkey snorts in its sleep. A child coughs behind a reed screen. A woman pours water into a jar, and the sound is small, clean, and strangely intimate. Above all of this, the sky opens. The stars do not seem distant in this world. They feel close, almost architectural. They seem arranged like bright pegs hammered into the ceiling of existence. You understand why the people of these cities treated the heavens as part of their civic life. The sky was not decoration over Mesopotamia. It was calendar, warning system, divine palace, and public notice board, all inconveniently placed very high up. Mainstream archaeology confirms that Sumerian cities were among the earliest urban societies in human history. Excavations and research associated with the University of Pennsylvania, the University of Chicago, and other major institutions have shown that by the 4th millennium before the Common Era, southern Mesopotamia contained large settlements with temples, administrative systems, craft production, and long-distance trade. That fact is sturdy enough to stand on. The rest of the night may grow stranger, but the cities were real. You can smell them now. There is bread baking somewhere, flat and warm, with a faint bitterness from the oven ash. There is fish from the canals, drying in the air. There is the sour thickness of animals kept too close to homes, because civilization often smells less like marble and more like goats. There is incense near the temple, resinous and sweet, drifting from a doorway where an offering has been made. The temple dominates the city. It rises in stages, made from brick, labour, and belief. Its high platform catches the last grey shine of the moon. Priests and workers move through its spaces with practised calm. Some carry jars, some carry baskets, some carry tablets. A temple is not only a sacred place, it is a storehouse, archive, employer, kitchen, workshop, a nervous centre of authority. The gods may dwell there, but grain also has opinions, and someone must keep track of it. You notice how often counting appears. Counting barley, counting sheep, counting jars of oil, counting workdays, counting offerings, counting lunar months, counting time until floodwater, counting omens in the sky. The habit of measurement grows everywhere, like reeds along a canal. It begins with survival, then becomes administration, then becomes scholarship, then becomes something almost mystical. In such a place, a star map is never only a star map. It belongs to a world where heaven and earth are tied together by duty. The farmer needs seasons, the ruler needs legitimacy, the temple needs order, the sailor on the river needs direction, the scribe needs a pattern that can be copied, taught, corrected, and stored. The night sky becomes useful because it repeats, and it becomes frightening because it repeats without asking permission. A quirky tradition clings to Eridu, one of the ancient cities remembered as especially old. Later Mesopotamian lore imagined it as a first city, a place where kingship descended before other centres rose. Some modern enthusiasts have stretched this reverence into claims that Eridu preserved memories of visitors from the stars. The claim is not accepted by professional historians, but the fascination is understandable. When a city is called first, people begin to ask what came before first. That question lingers softly. You step toward the canal bank, where the water reflects broken stars. Frogs call from the reeds. The mud is cool near your sandals. The river system gives life, but never without conditions. If the water is too low, crops fail. If it rises too violently, fields vanish. If canals clog with silt, hunger moves closer. The people of this land do not romanticize nature. They negotiate with it, fear it, manage it, and occasionally accuse the gods of poor planning. In this practical struggle, the heavens become part of management. The appearance of certain stars near dawn can mark the changing season. The moon shapes months and festivals. The sun measures work and heat. Planetary movements, slow and strange, seem different from ordinary stars. They wander against the background order, and wandering things invite stories. In a society trained to notice repetition, irregular brightness becomes meaningful. A soft scholarly debate continues around how ordinary people understood the formal sky knowledge preserved by scribes. Some researchers suggest that celestial interpretation remained mainly within elite temple and palace circles. Others argue that farmers, herders, sailors, and market people also carried practical sky wisdom in less formal ways. The tablets preserve the learned voice, but clay does not record every grandmother pointing at the horizon and saying the season has turned. That missing voice matters. You pause near a roof where a family sleeps beneath woven covers. Roofs are cooler than rooms. The night air lies gently across their faces. A clay lamp flickers beside a low wall, its flame pulling shadows over sleeping hands and stored baskets. From here, the stars appear between smoke threads and drying laundry. The cosmic and the domestic share the same quiet space. It is easy to imagine fear here. Not panic, not the sharp fear of a shouted warning, but the older fear that settles into routine. The fear that the rains may fail. The fear that a king has angered a god. The fear that a red planet means bloodshed, or that an eclipse has swallowed protection from the land. You may smile at that, from the safe arrogance of later centuries. Yet modern people still check numbers, forecasts, markets, medical scans, election maps, and blinking notifications with nearly religious intensity. So perhaps the distance is smaller than it seems. The city under the burning sky teaches a simple lesson. Civilization does not begin when humans stop being afraid. It begins when they build systems around fear. Walls, canals, temples, records, rituals, calendars, and star lists are all ways of saying that uncertainty must be watched. And in Sumer, watching became an art. The night deepens over the plain. A breeze moves through palm leaves with a sound like dry fingers brushing a curtain. Somewhere in the temple quarter, a scribe turns a tablet to catch lamplight. He does not know that distant sentries will search his world for secret warnings. He knows only that the sky is clear, the month must be tracked, and the city depends on order. Above him, the stars burn in silence. They shine on brick, water, grain, and sleeping bodies. They shine on rulers who feel powerful for a little while. They shine on scribes with tired eyes and steady hands. They shine on questions that will not stay buried. Even when the tablets crack, the cities fall, and the river changes its course. Your ears adjust to the temple night. At first, there is only the soft drag of wind along brickwork. Then other sounds appear, each one small enough to vanish if you listen too hard. A reed pen taps against a wooden board. A clay lamp hisses faintly as oil feeds the flame. Sandals scrape across a stair. Far below, a dog gives one tired bark, then seems to reconsider the entire idea of effort. The watcher stands where the roofline meets the open sky. He's not alone. Beside him rests a shallow bowl, a cord, a marked rod, and a tablet still damp enough to receive signs. Another man waits in the doorway, wrapped in a dark wool garment, ready to carry any urgent note to the officials below. The night has hierarchy. Even silence has supervisors. You stand near them without disturbing anything. The air is cooler here, though the bricks still hold a buried warmth. The temple height lifts you above the smells of animals and ovens, but not entirely. Smoke rises from courtyards. River dampness moves over the fields. Incense clings to the stones near the shrine chamber, sweet and resinous, like a memory trying too hard to become sacred. The watcher studies the moon first. Its shape matters. Its horns, its brightness, its position, its delay, its failure to appear when expected. Each detail can become a sign. In the Mesopotamian world, the moon is not merely a pale companion of the night. It is a ruler of months, ceremonies, calculations, and anxious interpretation. A thin crescent may begin a calendar. A darkened moon may disturb a kingdom. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm that lunar omens were among the most carefully preserved forms of celestial interpretation. Research at major universities and museums, including the University of Chicago and the British Museum, has shown how scribes copied omen series that linked appearances in the heavens to possible events on Earth. These were not casual guesses shouted from rooftops. They were learned traditions, copied, organised, corrected, and handed down. That makes them more unsettling. A superstition muttered once may fade. A superstition copied for centuries becomes an institution. It receives headings, categories, expert commentary, and perhaps a rather serious man who insists the previous generation handled the eclipse rules incorrectly. History has always provided employment for the confident. The watcher marks the moon's position. He knows the places of important stars. He has learned what should rise near the horizon at certain times. He notices when something seems early, late, dim, red, clouded, or swallowed. In his world, error is not harmless. A missed sign may be a missed danger. A careless reading may expose the king, the city, or the fields to forces that prefer no one sleep peacefully. You feel the pressure in that task. The sky is enormous. The tablet is small. Between them stands a human being with tired eyes. He watches for eclipses with special dread. When the moon darkens, the effect is not just beautiful, it is political. It can suggest danger to the king, disorder in the land, sickness, invasion, rebellion, or divine displeasure. The exact meaning depends on timing, direction, appearance, and inherited interpretation. The details matter because the gods, like all powerful administrators, apparently appreciate proper filing. A strange fringe tidbit follows this practice into later imagination. Some modern writers claim that Mesopotamian priests possessed advanced predictive astronomy far earlier than mainstream scholarship allows, almost as though they guarded a secret scientific inheritance. Professional historians usually answer with more caution. They recognize impressive observation and long memory. But they do not need hidden machinery to explain careful record-keeping across generations. Careful watching can look like magic. You see that now. One priest watches the moon. Another checks a list. A third compares the night to older omens. They speak quietly, not wanting to wake the gods, or perhaps not wanting to wake the senior priest, which in daily life may feel more urgent. A line is pressed into clay, another follows. The signs accumulate or is neat and compressed, each one a small wedge of human anxiety. The tablet does not predict one simple future. It offers conditional pattern. If this appears, then that may follow. If the moon is obscured on a certain day, the land may suffer. If a planet stands in a certain place, the king may face danger. If clouds cover a sign, the meaning may shift. The world becomes a grammar of omens. The heavens write the opening clause, and the earth supplies the consequence. An open scholarly discussion continues over whether these omen systems should be understood as religious divination, early scientific classification, political risk management, or all three at once. Scholars at Yale, Oxford, and other institutions have argued in different ways that the modern separation between science and belief can mislead us. The priest who observes an eclipse is recording a physical event, yet his purpose is not modern astronomy. His purpose is response. Response is everything. If danger is seen, ritual may follow, offerings may be made, prayers may be recited, the king may be protected through ceremonies meant to divert harm. The future is not always treated as fixed. A warning is useful because it can be answered. That is one of the gentler surprises inside ancient divination. The omen does not always say, "This will happen." Often it says, "Danger approaches, so act carefully. You breathe in the night air. Below." The city sleeps inside its fragile confidence. People trust the walls, the canals, the granaries, the officials, the gods, and possibly the cook who watered the beer less than usual. Above them, the priests remain awake, because a civilization needs someone to worry professionally while everyone else dreams. The watcher's face is half lit. Lamp flame moves across his cheek and catches in his eyes. He is not searching for entertainment in the sky. He is searching for responsibility. His body is tired, but his training holds him still. He knows the names of stars, the paths of wandering lights, the expected rhythms of the lunar month. He knows that one night of darkness can become a royal message by sunrise. You notice the calmness. There is no shouting when a sign is observed, no wild running through the temple court, only attention, comparison, writing, and the low murmur of men who have inherited a serious tradition. The drama is inward. It lives in the gap between a mark in the sky and a decision on earth. The moon climbs higher. Its light spills over the temple platform, making the bricks look almost white. Shadows collect in the joints between them. A thin breeze touches your face, carrying dust and the faint scent of sheep wool from the courtyards below. You feel how exposed human life seems beneath such a sky. The city is large, but the heavens are larger. The king is powerful, but the eclipse is not impressed. So the priests measure darkness. They measure it because darkness may have edges. They measure it because fear becomes less shapeless when pressed into lines. They measure it because a warning written down can be carried, debated, answered, and stored. The night does not become safe. It becomes legible. The tablet receives its final signs. A hand smooths the clay near the margin. The watcher looks once more toward the stars, those cold and patient witnesses. His work is unfinished, because the heavens will move again tomorrow, and the city will need another reading. That is the burden of watching. There is always another night. Above the sleeping roofs, the sky remains open. It does not explain itself. It offers patterns, disappearances, brightness, delay, and return. The priests gather these fragments with disciplined care, as if the universe has broken a message into pieces and scattered them across darkness. You listen to the quiet scratch of the stylus, and for a moment it feels as though human history is being written not by kings, but by people trying to understand why the moon has changed. Your mind drifts toward a room of shelves. They are not shelves in the modern sense. Smooth and polite, waiting for paperbacks and small decorative objects no one admits buying. These are storage spaces of packed clay, wood, reed, and shadow. Tablets rest in baskets, jars, and niches. Some are cleanly shaped, some are rough practice pieces. Some are broken at the corners, as if time has been nibbling them quietly. A lamp burns low near the doorway. Its light trembles over tablets filled with lists of grain, lists of workers, lists of offerings, lists of names, lists of places. Then, among them, lists of stars. The habit is the same, yet the subject has changed. A mind trained to order, barley now turns toward the sky, and the heavens are drawn into the same disciplined world of columns, sequences, and memory. The first star lists feel humble at first. They do not arrive like thunder. They arrive like inventory. A name is placed beside another name. A rising is noted. A season is connected with an appearance. Certain stars belong to divine figures, certain regions of the sky, certain months, or certain expectations. The universe begins to enter administration, which is perhaps the most Mesopotamian miracle imaginable. You lean over one tablet. The surface is uneven beneath the signs. Wedges cluster in rows, each mark holding a sound, a word, a memory, or a technical habit learned by repetition. The scribe who copied it may have been young, he may have been bored, he may have made a mistake, frowned at it, and hoped his teacher was in a forgiving mood. Ancient scholarship was sacred, yes, but it also involved homework. The stars receive names. Names turn lights into presences. Without names, the sky's a glittering field of distance. With names, it becomes a place inhabited by gods, animals, tools, heroes, and powers. A cluster is no longer merely a cluster. A bright point is no longer merely a bright point. The heavens become readable because language has climbed into them. Records confirm that Mesopotamian scholars preserved star catalogues and organised celestial traditions over long periods. The famous compendium, often called 3 stars, each arranged prominent stars into 3 broad paths associated with major divine powers. Later material, including the great star list known through its opening words as the Plough Star, helped connect stars, constellations, months, winds, and divine order. Scholars at the University of Chicago and Oxford have treated these texts as foundations for understanding early astronomical thought. The fact is plain. The feeling is stranger. Imagine standing in a city where every important space has a divine owner. The temple belongs to a god. The field depends on a god. The river carries a god's force. Then look upward. Would the sky be empty? Of course not. It too must have regions, rulers, roads, and meanings. The star list is not just a catalogue. It is a map of belonging. You can almost hear the teacher reciting. The students repeat the names in low voices, sitting cross-legged with clay tablets balanced on their palms. Their styluses press, lift, press again. The room smells of wet clay, reed fibre, oil smoke, and the faint sweat of concentration. Outside, market noise rises in flashes. Inside, the sky is being memorized one sign at a time. Some stars mark time with quiet authority. Their first appearance before dawn can announce a season. Their absence can remind observers that the year has turned. To people depending on harvest, flood patterns, and ritual calendars, such knowledge is not decorative. It has weight. A star rising at the edge of dawn can matter as much as a gate opening or a messenger arriving from a distant town. A quirky fringe tidbit grows from this precision. Modern seekers sometimes treat every ancient star name as a hidden code, as though scribes disguised forbidden knowledge in ordinary lists. In that view, a constellation may become a lost machine. A deity may become a traveller from the void, and a seasonal marker may become a countdown. It is imaginative. It is also rather convenient, since a secret code can always mean whatever the decoder already hoped to find. Still, the attraction is understandable. A list is quiet. A secret list is irresistible. The ancient star lists do feel incomplete, not because they hide modern prophecies, but because they belong to minds working inside a world partly lost to us. Each name carries stories, rituals, local traditions, and visual associations that may not survive completely. We can translate the signs and still miss the atmosphere around them. Reading ancient sky texts is sometimes like hearing half a song through a wall. A living debate remains among historians of astronomy over how these early star lists were used in daily practice. Some argue that they served mainly scholarly and ritual purposes within temple traditions. Others suggest they also helped structure calendars, seasonal observations, and the training of specialists who advised courts. Researchers at Yale, Brown, and other major centres continue to examine how observation, memory, and theology overlapped in these records. The debate matters because it changes the texture. A tablet used only in a schoolroom feels one way. A tablet consulted during a crisis feels another. A star name recited during a festival carries yet another kind of weight. The same signs can be lesson, ritual, memory, and warning, depending on whose hands lift the clay. You step outside the tablet room. The night air receives you with a slow coolness. Above the roofs, constellations stand in patterns that seem both familiar and foreign. Some names from the ancient lists would not match the pictures you learnt as a child. The sky itself is shared, but cultures draw different creatures from the same fire. One people sees a plough, another sees a wagon, another sees a god moving through the dark with terrifying patience. That difference is important. The ancient sky is not simply our sky with older labels. It is a mental world, arranged through agriculture, kingship, divine hierarchy, and inherited fear. To enter it, you must let go of the idea that stars are merely objects far away. For the Mesopotamian scholar, they are also signs inside a sacred order. Their paths do not just happen, they participate. A scribe points toward the east. There, near the horizon, a star will rise at its appointed time. The moment is quiet, almost private. No crowd cheers, no trumpet sounds. Yet the appearance is noted, because repetition has power. A light returns, and the city gains one more thread of certainty. Tomorrow still holds danger, naturally. Mesopotamia is generous that way, but the star has arrived. The first star lists teach you how civilization learns to trust patterns. Not perfectly, not innocently. The watchers know that patterns can fail, or seem to fail. Clouds hide the heavens. Dust storms blur the horizon. Political panic can turn a small sign into a large disaster. Still, the lists endure because they promise that the sky can be remembered. They promise that someone has seen this before, or something like it. The lamp inside the tablet room lowers. Its flame bends, straightens, and bends again. The tablets remain in their niches, holding names of stars that have outlived languages, dynasties, and the hands that wrote them. You sense the hidden tenderness of the work. To name a star is to admit that human life is brief, but attention can stretch across centuries. The heavens are no longer silent emptiness. They have become an archive, written not in ink, but in returning light. And beneath that archive, the scribes continue their careful labour, pressing the sky into clay, one patient sign after another. For a moment, the tablet room becomes colder. Not winter cold, not the clean bite of mountain air, but the chill of shade inside thick walls. You're standing near a workbench where a round tablet lies on a bed of woven reeds. Its clay has hardened into a pale brown disk. Marks cross its surface in careful divisions. Lines seem to radiate. Small signs gather near the edges. Someone once shaped the sky into a circle, then trusted clay to remember it. This is where imagination becomes dangerous. A flat tablet with celestial markings invites modern eyes to lean forward too quickly. You see a circle, and the mind whispers map. You see divisions, and the mind whispers coordinates. You see strange symbols, and the mind whispers secret. That whisper is pleasant, almost musical. It feels like a door opening somewhere behind the official story, which is exactly why one must walk slowly. The ancient scribe does not hurry either. He has damp clay before him, a stylus in his fingers, and a mental world built from training. He presses one wedge, then another. The marks are not decoration. They carry a system, but the system does not belong entirely to modern expectation. It is partly astronomical, partly ritual, partly educational, and partly administrative. The tablet may preserve a scheme of the heavens, but not necessarily a picture in the modern sense. You lean closer to the circle, its shape feels complete, comforting, almost hypnotic. A circle suggests a horizon, a calendar, a cycle, a heavenly vault seen from below. It suggests return. It suggests that time does not run away in a straight line forever, which is a soothing thought until you remember that bad harvests also return. The ancient world understood cycles without pretending they were always kind. Records confirm that Mesopotamian scholars used diagrams, lists, and mathematical procedures to organize celestial knowledge. Later Babylonian astronomy became especially skilled at tracking lunar and planetary cycles, and researchers connected with institutions such as Brown University, the University of Chicago, and Oxford have shown how this tradition grew from older scribal habits. The famous circular tablet, sometimes discussed in popular culture, is not a simple modern star chart, yet it belongs to a broad world of sky classification. That distinction matters. It is not nothing. It is not everything. You can imagine the tablet passing through hands. A teacher holds it while explaining a celestial division. A student copies a simpler version and gets one sign slightly wrong. A priest consults a diagram while preparing a ritual calendar. A later scribe repairs a damaged tradition by copying from an older source already cracked and difficult. Knowledge moves forward like a lamp carried through wind, sometimes steady, sometimes almost gone. The clay carries touch. You see fingerprints near one edge, faint and shallow. Perhaps they belong to the maker, perhaps to someone who lifted the tablet before it was fully dry. The print is not part of the text, yet it feels more intimate than any sign. It says a human body stood here, a thumb pressed too firmly. A person trying to preserve the heavens accidentally preserved the skin pattern of his hand. There is the scent of wet earth. Fresh clay smells cool, mineral, and ordinary. It does not smell like prophecy. It smells like riverbank, labour, and repetition. That is one of history's gentle jokes. The objects that later become mystical in glass cases were once office materials. A tablet that now draws whispers may once have been stacked with receipts for goats. The ancient universe, apparently, shared shelf space with livestock management. A quirky fringe claim attaches itself to certain circular or celestial tablets. Some modern interpreters argue that they record ancient knowledge of catastrophic impacts, hidden planets, or countdowns across millennia. In these theories, every damaged sign becomes a lost coordinate, and every missing portion becomes proof that the most important part was concealed. It is a tidy arrangement. Missing evidence, by its nature, is wonderfully obedient. Professional scholars move more carefully. They compare signs, language, tablet shape, archaeological context, and parallel texts. They ask what words meant in scribal tradition. They examine whether a diagram was astronomical, mathematical, religious, or instructional. They resist the temptation to treat every circle as a planetary map. This caution may feel less exciting, but it has its own beauty. It lets the ancient world remain ancient, instead of forcing it to become a mirror for modern anxiety. A scholarly debate continues over how to interpret some Mesopotamian celestial diagrams. Researchers disagree about exact functions, dating, and the relationship between schematic images and observation of the actual sky. Some see teaching tools, some see ritual layouts. Some see technical diagrams linked to later astronomical practice. The debate remains open in careful language, not because anything can mean anything, but because damaged clay rarely explains itself like a polite museum guide. You notice the tablet's silence. It does not say, "Here is a warning for a distant year." It does not name a modern calendar. It does not know the year 2027, because that number belongs to a system of counting time that would have been meaningless to the hand that shaped the clay. Yet the tablet does something more subtle. It proves that ancient people believed the sky could be ordered, studied, copied, and related to life on Earth. From that belief, many later dreams grow, You walk to the edge of the workroom, where a narrow opening looks down into a courtyard. Moonlight lies across storage jars. A cat slips along a wall with the solemn confidence of an official inspecting grain. Somewhere, a man sneezes, then mutters softly. The city continues in all its human smallness while the tablet beside you holds the vastness above. This contrast is tender. The heavens are immense, but the tools are humble. Clay, reed, oil flame, memory, fingers, training. The whole cosmic structure must pass through materials that can crack, burn, wash away, or be misread by someone much later who's very excited on the internet. One almost sympathizes with the tablet. It has survived empire, burial, excavation, translation, and now speculation. That is a long career for mud. The scribe returns to his work. He traces a division carefully. The stylus presses into the damp surface with a soft sound, hardly louder than a breath. A line marks space. A sign marks a name. A cluster marks a relationship between heaven and order. The circular form gathers the world inward, making the sky small enough for a table, small enough for teaching, small enough for control. But control is never complete. Clouds can cover an omen. Kings can ignore advice. Rivers can break banks. Enemies can arrive through dust. The tablet can help structure thought, yet it cannot command the heavens to behave. Its power lies in interpretation, not mastery. That is the quiet humility inside ancient scholarship. Even when wrapped in divine authority, you look again at the circle. Its divisions may feel like a wheel. They may suggest the turning of months, the paths of stars, the placement of signs, or the architecture of sacred order. The exact reading depends on evidence, and evidence is a patient creature. It does not enjoy being dragged faster than it can walk. So the so-called star map becomes something richer, not a secret chart with one hidden date waiting to frighten the future. Not a meaningless object either. It becomes a surviving gesture of thought, a way of arranging darkness into a form the human mind can hold. It tells you that ancient watchers did not merely gaze upward. They translated the sky into systems, and systems into clay. The lamp gutters near the wall, the tablet's surface catches one last ribbon of light, revealing raised ridges and pressed hollows. Each mark throws a tiny shadow. The heavens, reduced to signs, become a landscape of miniature valleys. You sense how easily a person could fall into them, searching for warnings, origins, and endings. The clay remains calm. It waits for the next reader, the next century, the next anxious age to bend over it and ask what the stars were trying to say. The wandering lights have a different temper. You notice them because they do not behave like the others. Fixed stars hold their stations with a dignity that feels almost architectural. They rise, they set, they return with the year, and their patterns make the night seem like a great ceiling carved with memory. But the planets move differently. They drift, they pause, they brighten, they disappear into the sun's glare, then return as if nothing awkward happened. To ancient eyes, this is suspicious behaviour. A steady star may be a marker. A wandering star feels like a messenger. It crosses boundaries. It enters one region, leaves another, changes brightness, and sometimes seems to reverse its course against the fixed background. In a world where movement carries meaning, such restlessness cannot be ignored. The planets become actors in the drama above, and the city below learns to watch their moods. The air smells of cooling brick and lamp smoke. You stand near a temple parapet, while the night deepens over the plain. The canal water reflects the stars in broken streaks. A priest points toward one bright planet low in the sky, its light white and steady, not glittering like the stars nearby. Another watcher notes its place among familiar constellations. A scribe waits with damp clay, because even heavenly uncertainty must be copied neatly. Venus commands special attention. It can appear as morning star or evening star. vanishing for a time before returning in another part of the sky. That transformation invites stories of descent, absence, renewal, and power. In Mesopotamian tradition, Venus becomes closely associated with a great goddess of love, war, beauty, and fierce sovereignty. The planet's light is lovely, yes, but loveliness in the ancient world is rarely harmless. Records confirm that Mesopotamian scholars preserved observations and omens connected with Venus and other planets. One famous body of material, studied by researchers at major institutions including the University of Chicago and Oxford, links the appearances and disappearances of Venus with the fate of kings and lands. These texts show that planetary movement was not treated as random sparkle. It was read as part of a living system of signs. You feel that system tightening around the night. If Venus appears on a certain date, prosperity may follow. If it disappears unexpectedly, danger may be suspected. If Mars burns red in a troubling place, violence may be imagined. If Jupiter shines in a favourable region, royal stability may be encouraged. The planets are not simply bodies. They are messages crossing the dark, sealed in light, delivered without explanation. That is rather rude of them. Still, the watchers persist. Mars is the most dramatic to human imagination because it carries a reddish glow. Modern astronomy explains that colour through dust and surface chemistry. But ancient interpretation does not need modern chemistry to feel the effect. A red wandering light in a black sky can easily become a sign of conflict, fever, or blood-coloured disorder. The eye sees redness. The mind supplies unease. Jupiter moves with slower authority. Its brightness feels calm but commanding, like a high official who never needs to raise his voice. Saturn is dimmer and more remote, moving with a grave slowness that invites patience and dread. Mercury is elusive, difficult near the horizon, appearing briefly in twilight like a secretive messenger who dislikes office hours. Each planet offers a different rhythm, and rhythm becomes personality. You begin to understand why planets became messengers. They are visible enough to track, irregular enough to provoke concern, and rhythmic enough to invite prediction. Their movements are neither chaotic nor easily grasped without training. That middle ground is powerful. What repeats can be studied? What surprises can be feared? What does both become sacred knowledge? A quirky fringe tidbit lingers around the idea of planetary messengers. Some modern writers claim that the wandering lights were remembered as actual vehicles of divine beings, preserving technological memories in mythic language. Mainstream scholars do not accept this as evidence. They see gods, symbols, observation, ritual imagination, and political interpretation. Yet the fringe claim persists because planets truly do seem to travel like deliberate presences across the ancient sky. You cannot blame the imagination entirely. The night itself encourages it. A planet rises from the horizon, passing through a low belt of dust. For a moment, it looks swollen and amber. Then it climbs, cleans itself in the dark, and becomes sharp. The watcher notes the change. Was the colour an omen, or only dust? Was the delay meaningful, or only haze? Was the god's message unclear, or was the atmosphere simply being inconvenient again? Ancient observers knew weather could interfere. Clouds, dust, smoke, and horizon conditions could hide or distort signs. This made interpretation delicate, and perhaps sometimes exhausting. A tablet might preserve rules for what a sign means, but the actual sky does not always present itself like a well-behaved example from a school lesson. Reality prefers smudges. An open scholarly debate continues over the degree to which planetary omen traditions grew from sustained observation, inherited myth, political need, or mathematical interest. Researchers at Brown University, Yale, and other centres have examined how later Babylonian astronomy developed sophisticated predictive methods. The older roots remain complex. The planets were watched both as physical lights and as divine signals, and those meanings were not easily separated. You stand beneath that complexity. The temple watcher is not merely guessing. He has inherited records. He knows expected cycles. He understands that Venus will return, that Mars changes brightness, that Jupiter moves slowly against the stars. Yet he also inhabits a world where divine intent can be expressed through natural order. To him, a pattern is not less sacred because it repeats. Repetition may be exactly how the gods speak clearly. This is a very old idea. Even now, people search patterns for messages. They follow markets, storms, disease curves, election shifts, solar cycles, and the restless blinking of machines. They say they want data, and they do. But beneath data often lies the older hunger. Tell me what is coming. Tell me whether the king is safe. Tell me whether the field will live. Tell me whether the sky is angry. The priest watches Mars again. Its red light hangs near a cluster of fixed stars. He murmurs something to the scribe. The scribe presses signs into clay, each wedge catching the lamplight for a brief second before dulling. The message, if it is one, must pass from planet to eye, from eye to voice, from voice to hand, from hand to tablet, from tablet to palace. At every step, uncertainty enters. Perhaps that is why ritual matters. When a planet brings warning, people do not only record it, they respond. Offerings are made, prayers are spoken, protective rites may be performed. The message does not belong to curiosity alone. It enters action. It affects policy, royal confidence, public fear, and temple authority. A wandering light can change the mood of a court. You imagine the king hearing such news. He sits in a chamber cooled by thick walls, smelling of cedar, wool, and old smoke. Advisors stand carefully, choosing words with the tender caution of men who prefer keeping their heads attached. The omen is explained. The danger is framed. The ritual solution is offered. Everyone behaves as though the heavens have sent a memo, and the administration is handling it. There is comfort in procedure. Even cosmic fear becomes manageable when placed into steps. Observe, record, interpret, report, appease, wait, watch again. The system gives shape to dread. The planets may wander, but human institutions build paths around their wandering. The bright planet lowers toward the west. Its light softens near the horizon. A bat flickers across the sky and vanishes. The city below rests in layers of shadow, its walls and courtyards breathing out the stored heat of the day. Somewhere, a child turns in sleep. Somewhere, a priest lifts a bowl in ritual silence. Somewhere, a scribe sets a tablet aside to dry. The planets continue their slow errands. They cross the ancient constellations without telling anyone what they truly are. Messengers, stones, gods, worlds, omens, mirrors. All of these meanings gather around them like dust around a traveller's feet. The watchers do not possess the final answer. They possess attention, and attention is where every warning begins. A palace does not sleep easily, even when its courtyards fall quiet. Worry remains awake behind its doors. You feel it in the guards standing near the entrance, in the servants walking softly across reed mats, in the scribes keeping tablets close to their chests. The palace is not only a house for a king, it is a place where fear is polished until it looks like ceremony. The night air smells of cedar oil and wool. Lamps burn along the corridors, their small flames bending whenever a curtain stirs. Painted walls catch the light in dull fragments. A bronze fitting gleams, then disappears into shadow. Somewhere deeper inside, a cup is set down too loudly, and three men pretend not to notice. Power has delicate ears. A messenger arrives from the temple quarter. He carries a tablet wrapped in cloth, not because the clay is precious in itself, but because the message might be. His sandals are dusty. His breath is measured. He has climbed steps, crossed courts, passed through gates, and offered names to men who enjoy delaying people of lower rank. Now he waits near an official who studies the seal and weighs the mood of the night. The king must be told. Not every omen reaches him, of course. Even kings need mercy from paperwork. Yet a serious celestial sign, especially one linked with an eclipse or a troubling planetary position, can move quickly through the machinery of rule. It enters the palace as a statement from above, interpreted by experts below, and carrying consequences for the man who claims authority between both worlds. You see him in a chamber of shadowed wealth. He's seated on a low platform, clothed in fine fabric, with attendants arranged around him like careful punctuation. His face is calm, because a king must make calmness look natural, even when the moon has just become a political problem. The omen is read aloud. The words are formal. The silence afterward is very human. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm that celestial omens could influence royal decisions and ritual responses. Major university research, including studies from Yale, Chicago, and Oxford, has examined tablets showing how eclipses and planetary signs were treated as warnings involving kingship, warfare, disease, and the stability of the land. The palace and the sky were connected through trained interpretation, not casual fear. That connection gives the night its weight. In this world, the king is more than an administrator. He is responsible for order. His body, fortune, and ritual purity matter to the whole land. If the heavens signal danger to him, the danger may spread beyond one person. It may threaten fields, armies, temples, childbirth, trade, and the confidence of every official who has invested heavily in the current arrangement. That is when ritual becomes political. A troubling omen does not simply create panic. It activates procedures. Priests may recommend offerings, prayers, purification rites, or protective ceremonies. In extreme traditions known from Mesopotamian sources, a substitute king could be placed temporarily on the throne to absorb the danger meant for the real ruler. It is an eerie solution, and one suspects the job description was not advertised honestly. The substitute king is a haunting figure. He may be chosen from someone vulnerable, marginal, or already condemned. He is dressed in royal garments, placed amid symbols of power, and treated as a temporary vessel for danger. The true king withdraws, hidden or ritually protected, while the omen's harm is redirected toward the substitute. Power creates theatre, and theatre becomes a shield. You feel the cruelty beneath the ceremony? The palace lamps glow softly. The ritual words may sound calm. The officials may speak of order, necessity, and divine procedure. Yet somewhere a human being becomes useful because he can be destroyed. Ancient societies were capable of profound beauty and profound convenience. They built star law, hymns, law codes, irrigation networks, and occasionally very unpleasant solutions to royal anxiety. A quirky fringe tidbit follows the substitute king practice into modern speculation. Some writers imagine these rituals as evidence of secret knowledge about cosmic energies, as though a false ruler could absorb invisible forces moving through the heavens. Scholars usually understand the practice through divination, kingship, and ritual substitution. Still, the idea that danger can be transferred to a symbolic double appears in many cultures, and it carries a strange psychological force. Perhaps fear likes a target. If danger is vague or it fills every room, if danger can be placed on a person, object, animal, or ritual image, people feel they have done something. The omen is no longer an endless darkness. It has been given a path. The substitute becomes a doorway through which harm is expected to pass. An open scholarly debate continues over how often substitute king rituals were performed, how literally officials understood them, and how consistently the surviving texts reflect actual practice. Researchers at universities such as Harvard, Yale, and Chicago have approached these sources with caution, because ritual instructions do not always prove routine behavior. A text may preserve an ideal response, a rare emergency procedure, or a tradition copied long after its most intense use. The palace waits inside that uncertainty. A chief scholar explains the omen again. His voice is careful, respectful, almost soothing. He doesn't say the king is doomed. That would be bold, and possibly brief. He says the sign indicates danger. He says the proper rites may avert it. He says the timing must be observed. He says the gods have warned, which means the gods have also allowed a response. That last idea matters. A warning is not the same as a sentence. The king listens. His fingers rest on the arm of his seat. A gold ring catches lamplight. You wonder what passes through his mind. Does he believe completely? Does he doubt privately? Does belief matter less than the need to perform belief before priests, officials, and gods? A ruler may command armies, yet still become captive to the meaning of the sky. Outside, soldiers stand under the star. They know nothing of the tablet's exact wording. They know only that messages have passed. Lamps burn late, and important men look serious. Rumour will take care of the rest. By dawn, the palace kitchens may know that Mars has threatened the king, or the moon has darkened over his enemies, or a priest saw disaster near the Horn of the Crescent. Rumour is the oldest courier and rarely asks for accuracy. The omen enters daily life. A merchant might delay a journey. A mother might whisper a prayer. A farmer might watch the horizon with new suspicion. The palace's fear trickles outward, becoming part of the city's breath. Celestial interpretation is not sealed inside elite rooms, even when controlled by experts. It shapes the mood of everyone beneath the same sky. You step into a courtyard. The night has cooled the paving stones. A basin reflects the moon in trembling silver. Date palms stand motionless near the wall, their fronds black against the stars. A servant pours water over his hands, perhaps for ritual purity, perhaps because palace work is dusty, and the gods are not the only ones who appreciate cleanliness. The officials begin preparing the response. A tablet is drafted. Offerings are listed. Messengers are sent. A ritual specialist is summoned from a nearby temple. The king may withdraw from ordinary duties for a time. The substitute, if required, may be chosen and dressed. Every action seeks to restore a broken balance between heaven and earth. The machinery is solemn and unnerving. It tells you that ancient warnings were not always about predicting events for curious listeners. They were about preserving order when uncertainty threatened authority. A celestial sign could shake the throne because the throne claimed to stand within the cosmos. If the sky frowned, the palace had to answer. The moonlight shifts across the courtyard. You sense how fragile kingship becomes under stars. From the ground, a ruler seems elevated, surrounded by guards, rituals, seals, and titles. From the heavens, he is one breathing figure among many, seated inside walls made from mud. The stars have watched many kings. They do not appear sentimental, yet the king's fear is also your fear. You may not sit on a throne, and that is probably healthier for your sleep, but you understand the longing for warning and remedy. You understand the hope that danger might announce itself early enough to be managed. You understand the comfort of experts, procedures, and solemn voices telling you that the proper steps exist. The tablet rests near the palace scribe. Its message has entered the body of power. It has moved from darkness to observation, from observation to writing, from writing to interpretation, from interpretation to royal response. The sky has become government. The omen has become policy. The moon has become a matter of state. The palace grows quiet again. Not peaceful, exactly. Quiet. There is a difference. Lamps burn lower. Guards shift their weight. Behind a curtain, the king remains awake, listening perhaps to footsteps, perhaps to prayers, perhaps to his own breath. Above the roof, the planets continue moving through their patient paths. They offer no explanation. They only shine, wander, vanish, and return. While humans below clothe their fear in ritual and call it order, the river has a memory of its own. You hear it before you see it. a low movement beyond the fields, sliding through darkness with the patience of something older than walls. Water presses softly against reed banks. It curls around moored boats and carries scraps of straw, moonlight, fish scales, and whatever small offerings people have given it in hope. The river does not hurry. It does not explain. It only keeps moving. You stand where the plain lowers toward the marsh. The air's damp here, thicker than the dry streets of the city. It smells of mud, reeds, birds, and living things hidden in black water. Insects hum near your ears. Frogs call from unseen pools. Far away, a heron lifts from the shallows with a sudden flap, as if the night itself has been startled awake. Flood is not an idea in this landscape. It is a force with edges, sounds, seasons, and teeth. The people of southern Mesopotamia know that water can be coaxed into canals, persuaded into fields, and stored in basins. They also know it can ignore all arrangements. A river that feeds a city can erase its boundaries. A canal that saves a harvest can become a wound across the land. Water is life, but it is not polite life. Records from archaeology confirm that flood deposits appear at several ancient Mesopotamian sites, though not as one simple universal layer covering every city at once. Excavations at places such as Kish, and Shuruppak produced evidence that some communities experienced serious flooding in deep antiquity. Scholars from institutions including the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Chicago have treated these findings carefully, separating local disasters from later mythic memory. That distinction is important. A real flood can become a remembered flood. A remembered flood can become a sacred story. A sacred story can grow until it fills the whole horizon of imagination. Somewhere along that path, mud becomes myth, and a broken wall becomes a warning for all humanity. You see the water rising. Not suddenly at first, it creeps. It enters low fields and shines between rows of barley. It fills ditches, spreads through animal pens, and gathers at the base of walls. People watch, annoyed before they're afraid. Someone curses the canal workers. Someone blames a neighbour. Someone says this happened when his grandfather was young and everyone survived, mostly because grandfathers in stories are very durable. Then the water keeps coming. The mood changes. Baskets are lifted onto roofs. Children are carried. Animals pull against ropes. Grain jars are moved to higher rooms. The sound of the river grows larger, rougher, almost full of voices. In the dark, the border between field and canal disappears. The land becomes one surface, shining under a troubled sky. This is how flood memory enters the body. Cold water around the ankles, wet wool dragging against the skin, a child crying from a roof, clay walls softening under pressure, reed mats floating away like pieces of a ruined floor, the smell of churned mud and frightened animals, the strange helplessness of seeing familiar paths vanish beneath brown water. A flood is geography losing its manners. In Sumerian tradition, stories of a great flood appear in ancient form, later echoed in broader Mesopotamian literature. The figure, often remembered by modern readers through later names, belongs to a lineage of flood survivors who receive warning, build a vessel, preserve life, and witness the renewal of the world. The details shift across texts, but the pattern is unmistakable. Catastrophe arrives. A chosen human survives. The world begins again under a changed sky. You listen to that pattern softly. It is not only a disaster tale. It is a story about fragile knowledge. Someone must hear the warning. Someone must believe it. Someone must act before evidence becomes obvious to everyone else, which is always the awkward part of warnings. If the water is already at the door, prophecy has become weather. A quirky fringe tidbit attaches to the flood stories with impressive persistence. Some modern writers claim that the Sumerian flood preserves memory of a global cataclysm caused by celestial forces. Perhaps a comet, planet, or hidden cycle in the heavens. Professional scholars remain cautious. They point to riverine floods, local trauma, literary development, and theological meaning. Yet the fringe idea survives because flood stories everywhere seem to lift human fear from the ground into the sky. Perhaps that is because water reflects stars. You look down at the flooded field, and the night appears beneath your feet. Constellations tremble in muddy water. The heavens seem broken and scattered across the land. For people who read the sky as a surface of meaning, disaster on earth and signs above could feel joined. A strange moon, a storm season, an eclipse, a river rising beyond a memory, all might become pieces of the same terrible sentence. An open scholarly debate continues over the relationship between actual ancient flooding and the literary flood traditions of Mesopotamia. Some historians emphasize environmental events preserved through cultural memory. Others focus on the role of royal ideology, divine judgment, and mythic storytelling. Researchers at Yale, Oxford, and other centres have noted that ancient texts can preserve memories of real danger while reshaping them into moral and cosmic patterns. The reshaping is where the hidden timeline begins to breathe. Flood stories often imply a world before the flood, a world arranged differently, governed differently, perhaps closer to the gods. Then the waters come, and the old order is interrupted. Afterward, kingship, ritual, cities, and human duty must be restored. The flood becomes a seam in time. On one side, an age half remembered. On the other, the world of record keepers, temples, and clay tablets. You feel the seam under your hand. It is not smooth, it is rough, like a broken tablet edge. The ancient mind does not treat time as empty sequence. Time has ages, thresholds, divine decisions, punishments, renewals, and forgotten beginnings. The flood is one of those thresholds. It says that human history may not be one continuous road, but a landscape interrupted by waters deep enough to drown memory. The survivor in the story becomes important. He is not merely lucky, he is warned. He receives knowledge that others do not possess or do not understand. He builds in obedience to a message that must have looked absurd until the clouds gathered. You can imagine neighbours watching him work, making little remarks, because civilization invented sarcasm long before plumbing. Then the rain begins, and jokes become rather less elegant. The vessel itself becomes a moving archive. Inside it are lives, seeds, skills, animals, memory, and the thin thread of continuity. The world outside becomes water. The world inside becomes waiting. In that enclosed darkness, every sound matters. Rain on the roof, wood creaking, animals shifting, breath, prayer. The survivor does not control the flood. He preserves what can pass through it. This is why the story endures. It speaks to every society that fears collapse. It asks what should be saved when order fails. Grain, law, family, ritual, names, animals, tools, songs, star knowledge, perhaps even the memory of why the flood came. The answer is never simple. A culture survives by choosing what can fit inside its vessel. You stand at the edge of the ancient water. The floodplain glimmers under moonlight. Reeds bend and rise again. A broken pot turns slowly in the current. Somewhere beyond the darkness, a settlement may be gone by morning, or only damaged, or saved by a wall built high enough through luck and stubborn labour. The river does not care which version becomes literature. Yet humans care. They carry the story forward. They tell it beside hearths. They press it into clay. They reshape it through divine names, royal lists, temple teaching, and the slow work of scribes. The flood becomes more than water. It becomes an ancient warning that order is temporary. Memory is fragile, and survival depends on hearing what others ignore. The stars remain above the flooded plain. Their reflections shiver in the dark water, as if heaven itself has been disturbed. You look at them and understand why later minds link sky, disaster, and destiny. The connection may not be a coded prediction. It may be something older and more human. When the ground disappears beneath water, people look upward and ask who knew this was coming. The river moves on. It carries silt, reeds, broken walls, and stories not yet written. It leaves behind mud thick enough for new fields, and fear deep enough for myth. In that soft, dark residue, the memory of a flood waits to become a warning, and the warning waits to become history. Long before recorded history, the plain seems to hold its breath. You stand in a landscape not yet crowded with the names of kings. The cities have not fully lifted their temple towers against the sky, or perhaps they have done so in forms too early for memory to keep clearly. The canals are fewer, the settlements are lower, the night feels wider because fewer walls interrupt it. The stars seem to pour downward like cold grain from an invisible basket. This is the uneasy region before the lists begin, not before human life. Of course. People have already walked, farmed, buried their dead, traded goods, shaped clay, told stories, and stared at the moon with the same patient confusion that belongs to every age. But it is before history becomes comfortable with itself. It is before names settle into sequence, before kings stand in neat columns, before scribes try to convince time to behave. The ground beneath your feet is packed and pale. There are hearths nearby, low storage pits, woven reed walls, and the quiet remains of meals. A dog sleeps near a doorway. A woman repairs a basket by lamplight, pulling fibre through fibre with slow concentration. A child watches her fingers, learning without being instructed. The world is smaller than a later city, yet it is not simple. No human world has ever been simple. People just leave fewer records when they are busy surviving. Smoke drifts over the settlement. It smells of reeds, dung fuel, fish bones, and cooked grain. Beyond the houses, fields lie under moonlight, watered by channels cut with effort and maintained with irritation. To live here is to cooperate with neighbours, argue about boundaries, fear the river, track seasons, and remember which ancestor made which promise. Civilization grows from such ordinary pressures, one complaint at a time. Mainstream archaeology confirms that southern Mesopotamia developed through long processes before the famous historical cities fully emerged. Research connected with the University of Chicago, Harvard, and other major institutions has traced earlier village life, irrigation, craft specialization, trade networks, and temple economies across the 4th and 5th millennia before the Common Era. The first written records did not create complexity. They captured a complexity already growing. That fact changes the mood. Writing is not the beginning of everything. It is a late arrival with a very confident posture. Before clay tablets record offerings and omens, human memory has already stored generations of knowledge in songs, gestures, seasonal habits, burial customs, and stories told in the dark. The hidden timeline is not hidden because it is imaginary. It is hidden because much of it was never pressed into clay. You feel that absence everywhere. A man sharpens a tool beside a doorway, and no tablet records his name. A girl learns the first stars of the planting season, and no scribe preserves her voice. A grandmother recalls a flood from her own childhood, and the story passes into family memory, changing slightly every time it is told. Later, a temple text may turn such memories into divine drama. Earlier, they are simply the way people stay alive. This is where myth begins to gather. It does not begin as a lie. It begins as memory stretched across time, warmed by fear, shaped by ritual, and polished by repetition. A flood becomes the flood. A first settlement becomes the first city. A wise ancestor becomes a being from before ordinary humans. A teaching about planting becomes a gift from the gods. By the time scribes record these things, they are already old, already layered, already carrying more than one truth. A quirky fringe tidbit often appears at this threshold. Some modern writers imagine that pre-written Mesopotamia concealed an advanced civilization erased by flood, impact, or deliberate destruction. They point to sudden urban growth and ask whether forgotten teachers guided humanity from the shadows. Professional archaeologists usually prefer slower explanations, involving environment, labour, trade, and social organisation. Still, the fantasy has strength because the gap before writing feels like a dark room with a locked door, and locked doors invite stories. You walk toward the edge of the settlement, where the open land begins. The soil cools beneath your feet. Night birds call from the reeds. Above the horizon, a bright star rises at a familiar angle. Though no one here writes it down, someone notices it anyway. Someone always notices. Human attention does not wait for alphabets. The hidden timeline is not a straight tunnel. It is more like a buried city with rooms collapsed into one another. Archaeology uncovers pottery, foundations, graves, seeds, animal bones, tools, and traces of trade. Texts preserve later memories of divine ages, first kings, and time before the flood. Neither source is complete. They speak in different voices. One gives ash, bone, and mud. The other gives gods, numbers, and impossible rains. Between them, the imagination must be careful. An open scholarly debate continues over how much early Mesopotamian myth preserves genuine social memory from periods before writing. Some researchers emphasize oral tradition and cultural continuity. Others warn that literary texts often reshape the past for religious or political purposes. Scholars at Oxford, Yale, and the University of Pennsylvania have approached this question through archaeology, language, and comparative ancient literature, finding possibilities rather than simple answers. Possibilities are enough for tonight. They allow you to stand between the worlds. On one side, the physical traces of villages, fields, kilns, canals, and graves. On the other, stories claiming that kingship descended from heaven, that great rulers reigned before the flood, and that knowledge arrived through beings who belonged partly to the divine order. The old texts do not sound like excavation reports. They sound like memory dreaming in symbols. You move through a patch of dry grass. The stars are brilliant. The Milky Way stretches overhead like pale dust spilled across black stone. No modern map names the moment. No calendar page catches it. Yet the sky is already teaching people to think in cycles. The moon returns. The river rises. The seasons turn. Children become elders. Elders become names. Names become stories. Stories become sacred because they survive. This may be the first hidden warning. Not a year, not a date, not a neat prediction waiting thousands of years for a nervous modern audience. The warning is that human beings begin forgetting almost as soon as they begin remembering. Every generation receives a world already explained by others, then mistakes the explanation for the whole truth. Under the surface, older layers remain. The settlement quiets behind you. The basket maker has gone inside. The dog lifts its head, listens, then returns to sleep. A low fire glows through a doorway, breathing red light into the dark. You sense that the people here are not primitive shadows waiting for history to begin. They are fully human, already carrying grief, humour, skill, jealousy, devotion, and the suspicion that the sky knows more than it says. The first cities will rise from such lives. Their temples will inherit older holy places. Their scribes will formalize older memories. Their kings will claim connection to powers already feared and honoured in smaller communities. Their star lists will organize lights that farmers, hunters, shepherds, and mothers have watched for generations. Written history will arrive not as sunrise, but as lamplight in a room already filled with people. You pause beneath the open sky. It seems almost too large for the plane. The stars do not belong to the city yet. They have not been fully named, divided, listed, and assigned to divine paths. They are still a vast presence above human effort, cold and beautiful, promising order without explaining the cost. In a time that's no longer remembered, someone looks up. Perhaps he's a farmer, standing knee-deep in an irrigation ditch. Perhaps she's a healer returning from a birth. Perhaps a child wakes on a roof and sees a bright planet where no star should be. No tablet preserves the thought that follows. Yet the thought matters. It may be the beginning of a question that later scribes will inherit without knowing its first speaker. What came before us? The night does not answer directly. It gives only patterns, returns, disasters, and lights moving with impossible calm. The hidden timeline stretches beneath your feet, not empty, but crowded with lost voices. They do not reveal a secret civilization in any easy sense. They reveal something more delicate. Human memory is deeper than writing, and the oldest warnings may have travelled as stories long before they became signs in clay. The stars continue to shine over the unrecorded plain. They see the villages before the cities, the fields before the archives, the fears before the formulas. They shine on people who do not yet know they are becoming ancient, and in their silence you feel the first outline of a world that history can touch only at the edges. The old lists begin to sound less like history. You hear them in a scribe's chamber, spoken in a low voice while the lamp flame leans toward the wall. Names pass from mouth to memory, then from memory into clay. Some names belong to cities, some belong to rulers, some belong to beings who seem to stand at the edge of humanity, close enough to teach, distant enough to trouble the mind. The air is heavy with wax smoke and damp earth. A tablet lies on the table, and its lines arrange time into an order that feels both careful and impossible. Before ordinary kings, before familiar dynasties, before the comfort of shorter reigns and recognizable politics, the texts sometimes place figures of enormous duration. They rule for spans that no human body could endure. They belong to the misty zone where sacred number, royal prestige, and cosmic memory touch one another. You listen to the recitation. The voice is calm. That is what makes it strange. The scribe does not gasp at the impossible years. He does not pause to apologize to future historians. He reads as though the numbers belong where they are, as though time itself was once wider, slower, and more generous to kings who stood near the beginning. Mainstream scholarship confirms that Mesopotamian texts preserve traditions of kingship before the flood, including lists where rulers reigned for extraordinarily long periods. Research associated with Oxford, Yale, and the University of Chicago has explored these king lists as literary, political, and theological documents rather than straightforward chronicles. They preserve ideas about authority and antiquity, not simple census records from a convenient heavenly office. That makes them no less powerful. If anything, it makes them more revealing. A society does not invent impossible time at random. It stretches time to create distance, reverence, and sacred legitimacy. The kings before the flood are not merely old. They are placed in an age when the world worked differently. Their reigns say that before remembered order, there was another order, grander, stranger, and perhaps closer to the gods. You see the number 7 appear like a shadow. 7 sages, 7 wise figures, 7 beings connected in later tradition with knowledge before and after the flood. The number carries weight across Mesopotamian thought, appearing in divine groups, ritual patterns, gates, winds, and lists. It does not always mean the same thing. Numbers in ancient traditions are not tidy little servants. They are symbolic animals, moving through many fields. The sages are especially haunting. Later, Mesopotamian lore speaks of ancient wise beings who brought skills, rituals, crafts, and knowledge to humanity. They are sometimes associated with primeval times, with cities, with temples, and with the ordering of civilized life. In some traditions, they emerge from watery depths or stand between the human and divine realms. They are not exactly gods, not exactly men. That middle state is where unease grows. You picture them at twilight. The marsh water is dark, reflecting a violet sky. Reeds stand tall and motionless. A figure steps from the edge of the water, robed in shapes that later artists may render with fish-like forms, carrying the mystery of the deep. The image is not a photograph of an event. It is a symbol of knowledge arriving from outside ordinary life. Still, symbols can feel more alive than facts when the night is quiet. A quirky fringe tidbit surrounds these sages with unusual persistence. Some modern writers claim they were visitors from another world, remembered through myth as teachers who gave civilization to early humans. Professional historians usually interpret them as mythic culture bearers, ritual figures, and expressions of sacred learning. Yet the fringe reading clings to the watery, hybrid imagery because it looks so wonderfully unsuitable for ordinary committee work. The ancient mind needed such figures. Civilization is too large to feel self-made. Irrigation, writing, measurement, temple ritual, metalwork, law, music, and star knowledge appear so powerful that later tradition imagines them as gifts. Humans farm, build, count, and worship. Yet they ask who first taught these things. At the beginning of skill, they place a teacher. At the beginning of teachers, they place the divine. You walk through a temple corridor. Carved forms watch from the walls. A door turns on its socket with a low wooden groan. Inside, ritual objects rest in shadow. Bowls, stands, figurines, woven cloths, and tablets create an atmosphere of controlled mystery. This is not chaos. The sacred here is structured. Every gesture has a place. Every word may have a lineage. Knowledge is not casual. It is inherited under supervision. An open scholarly debate continues over the origins and meanings of the ancient sages in Mesopotamian tradition. Some researchers emphasize their role as mythic explanations for specialized knowledge. Others examine links with priestly identity, protective rituals, and the authority of scribal learning. Scholars at Harvard, Chicago, and Oxford have noted that these figures blur categories deliberately, allowing human institutions to claim roots beyond ordinary human invention. That blur is the key. The sages give civilization an ancestry older than civilization itself. They imply that human order is not merely built from mud, brick, and labour. It descends from a deeper structure. The city becomes the visible surface of something hidden. The temple becomes the earthly copy of a cosmic design. The star list becomes not only observation, but recovered wisdom from a time when knowledge stood nearer to creation. You begin to feel the system forming. Before ordinary history, kingship descends. Before ordinary learning, sages teach. Before ordinary cities, sacred cities are named. Before ordinary disaster, a flood divides time. The elements are separate, yet they lean toward one another. They create a pattern in which humanity is late, dependent, instructed, and fragile. This is not a comfortable pattern. Modern people prefer to imagine humanity discovering everything through bold effort and excellent note-taking. The ancient stories allow less pride. They say, perhaps, that people were taught. Perhaps they were assigned. Perhaps civilization is not the natural possession of humankind, but a loan from powers whose purposes remain unclear. The scribes do not spell it out for you. They rarely do. They preserve names, numbers, sequences, and ritual memories. The modern reader must resist both disbelief and excitement. It is too easy to dismiss the sages as fantasy. It is equally easy to turn them into astronauts, engineers, or hidden masters with suspiciously modern interests. The slower path is more rewarding. Let them remain what they are, ancient figures of boundary and transmission. Boundary figures matter. They stand at doors. They cross water. They move between sky and earth, old time and recorded time, divine command and human labour. They carry knowledge across thresholds. In a world that remembers flood, such carriers become essential. If everything can be washed away, someone must preserve the pattern. You hear water again in the distance. Not a roaring flood this time, but the gentle slap of canal water against a boat. The sound enters the scribe's chamber through a high opening. It reminds you that wisdom in Mesopotamia often rises from watery places. the marsh, the deep, the river, the hidden source below the world, all become images of origin. Knowledge comes from depths, not from empty air. The number 7 returns softly. 7 can feel complete without being final. It suggests a set, a circle of figures, a structure that can be remembered. 7 sages before ordinary order. 7 teachers against forgetfulness. 7 shapes standing in the dim region where myth arranges what archaeology cannot recover. You watch the scribe finish a line. He lifts the stylus and studies the tablet. His eyes are tired, but his posture remains exact. He may not believe every ancient number literally, or he may believe them with a calm that would embarrass modern skepticism. Either way, he preserves the tradition. That act matters more than his private doubt. Civilizations survive by copying what they are not fully able to explain. The lamp lowers, shadows thicken around the tablets, names of sages, kings, cities, and divine powers remain pressed into clay, waiting for future hands. They suggest that humanity entered a world already organized by invisible hierarchies. They suggest that knowledge has origins hidden behind floodwater, ritual, and starfire. You're left with a quiet unease. If these beings are only symbols, they are symbols of something profound. If they preserve distant memory, the memory has been transformed beyond simple recovery. If they are literary inventions, they still reveal what the ancient mind feared and desired. Humans wanted teachers older than themselves. They wanted the city to have cosmic permission. They wanted the fragile work of civilization to rest on more than mud. The tablet dries in silence. Outside, the stars move over the temple roof, and the canal reflects them in narrow trembling lines. Somewhere between water and sky, the 7 figures remain, neither fully believed nor fully gone, guarding the question of who taught humanity to look upward and call the lights by name. The sky begins to resemble a machine, not a machine of metal, gears, and clean edges, but an older machine made from rhythm, memory, ritual, fear, and returning light. You feel it turning above the city with immense slowness. The moon changes shape. The planets wander. The stars rise in their appointed places. The river swells and sinks. Kings rule, tremble, sacrifice, and vanish. The pattern does not stop to mourn them. You stand between temple and palace. The road beneath your feet is packed with dust, dung, straw, and the crushed remains of countless sandals. On one side, the temple lifts its stepped form toward the heavens. On the other, the palace holds its guarded courtyards and restless officials. Between them moves the city, alive with bakers, potters, scribes, soldiers, widows, children, merchants, and men who loudly explain irrigation while doing very little of it. Above everyone, the sky waits. The ancient warning system is not one tablet, one symbol, or one sudden date. It is a network. A crescent moon appears too faint. A planet stands in an uneasy place. A storm arrives at the wrong season. An eclipse darkens the moon over a kingdom already nervous. The signs are gathered, compared, and given meaning. Heaven speaks in fragments, and specialists attempt the dangerous work of grammar. The temple supplies the trained eyes. The palace supplies the need for decisions. The fields supply the fear of hunger. The river supplies reminders that human plans remain optional to nature. When these forces meet, the sky becomes a system of warning because society requires warnings. A city cannot wait until disaster enters the gate. It wants notice. It wants time. It wants someone else awake on the roof, preferably with excellent handwriting. Records confirm that Mesopotamian omen literature grew into large and organized collections, covering celestial events, unusual births, dreams, weather, animals, and other signs. Research from the University of Chicago, Yale, and Oxford has shown that such texts formed a learned tradition used by scholars connected with temple and royal circles. The system was broad, disciplined, and deeply woven into political life. This is the important part. The heavens were not interpreted alone. They belonged to a wider field of signs, a malformed lamb, a strange dream, a lightning strike, an eclipse, and a planet's position might all be treated as meaningful disturbances. The world itself became a surface to be read. Earth, body, sky, and palace were pages in one enormous book. Though the book had a habit of smudging its own ink, you enter a scribal chamber at dawn. The night's observations have been brought inside. Tablets lie near older tablets, and the older ones are consulted with solemn fatigue. A scholar compares wording, another checks a copied series, a third mutters about damaged signs and uncertain readings. The room smells of clay, smoke, and stale sleeplessness. Scholarship, even sacred scholarship, can look remarkably like people needing breakfast. A sign must be classified. Was the moon's darkness complete or partial? Did the planet stand to the right or left of a named star? Did clouds hide the omen? Or did they arrive after it had already been observed? Which day of the month was counted? Which region of the sky held the event? The meaning changes with the detail. The system demands precision, because the wrong warning can be as dangerous as no warning at all. This is where ancient thought becomes unexpectedly modern, not in its conclusions, but in its appetite for pattern. The scholars gathered data from inherited records. They organize cases. They preserve precedents. They debate readings. They understand that the same event can mean different things under different conditions. Their purpose is divination, not modern science. But the discipline of comparison is real. Human beings have always tried to make uncertainty smaller by arranging it. A quirky fringe tidbit grows from this complexity. Some modern theorists claim the omen system concealed a forgotten global science, with Sumerian priests tracking cycles of catastrophe across immense spans of time. In this view, the tablets become fragments of a lost alarm system set by ancient masters. Mainstream historians are not persuaded. They see a brilliant, anxious, sacred bureaucracy of meaning, not a countdown machine aimed at one future year. Yet the phrase warning system still fits. It fits if you use it carefully. The system warned kings when rituals were needed. It warned officials when danger might threaten the land. It warned communities, indirectly, that order depended on attention. It warned human pride that the world could not be ruled by command alone. Every omen said, in its own quiet way, "You are not the only force acting here. You walk into the market as morning spreads. A fish seller arranges his catch on wet reeds. A woman weighs grain. A potter checks jars with a tap of his knuckle. Children chase each other through dust until an adult ends joy with unnecessary efficiency. None of them may know the exact omen read in the temple, yet all live inside the same interpretive world. A strange sky can become public unease before noon. The warning travels through hints. A priest buys extra oil for offerings. A palace official delays a journey. A messenger leaves through the gate. Someone sees extra animals led toward the temple. Someone else hears that the king will not appear publicly that day. By evening, the city has shaped its own version. The stars warned of sickness. No, of war. No, of drought. No, of the king's enemies. Rumour is an interpreter without training. The system is fragile because people are involved. A sign can be misread. A report can be softened. A king can dislike the message. A priest can exaggerate danger to increase authority. An official can weaponize an omen against a rival. The heavens may be distant, but politics is always nearby. Leaning in with a friendly smile and a knife under the robe, an open scholarly debate continues over the practical influence of omen interpretation on actual policy. Some historians argue that divination could shape major royal decisions, including rituals, campaigns, and court behaviour. Others caution that texts may reflect ideal scholarly procedure more than everyday governance. Researchers at Harvard, Brown, and Yale have examined letters, reports, and omen tablets to understand where belief, strategy, and administration overlapped. That overlap is the heart of the machine. A warning becomes powerful only when people act on it. A star cannot command an army by itself. An eclipse cannot appoint a substitute king without priests, officials, guards, scribes, and servants doing the work. The cosmic sign needs human institutions to become history. The heavens may begin the message, but the city completes it. You see the pattern widen. Flood stories warn of collapse. Star lists warn through order. Planetary omens warn through wandering lights. Royal rituals warn that power is vulnerable. Sages warn that human knowledge may not be self-sufficient. All of these pieces fit into a single uneasy structure. The world is readable, but never fully safe. The gods may warn, but not always gently. Humans may respond, but never with certainty. The idea is calming and unsettling at once. It is calming because the world is not meaningless. It is unsettling because meaning can be dangerous. If every event may be a sign, then peace itself becomes something to inspect suspiciously. A beautiful sunrise may reassure, a red haze may trouble, a quiet sky may bring relief, unless quietness is itself unnatural. There is no end to interpretation once the universe has been trained to speak. The city moves beneath that pressure. Workers carry bricks toward a wall repair. A scribe delivers a tablet to an official who sighs before reading it. A feeling still honoured in offices everywhere. A musician tunes a stringed instrument near a courtyard. A temple attendant washes a stone threshold. Everywhere. People maintain the visible world while invisible meanings gather overhead. You return to the temple roof at dusk. The first star appears, small and sharp, then another. Then the sky slowly reveals the pattern hidden by daylight. The city's noises sink into layers. The canals darken. Palm fronds whisper above walls. The same vast mechanism begins again. Not with a crash, but with a single point of light returning on schedule. This is the old warning system. Not a siren, not a trumpet, not a sentence naming a distant date in a calendar not yet invented. It is a disciplined suspicion toward the universe, sustained by scribes, priests, rulers, farmers, and storytellers. It is the belief that danger may announce itself softly, and that only the attentive will hear. You breathe in the cooling air. The sky does not reveal all. It never has. It offers enough pattern to invite trust, and enough mystery to prevent rest. Beneath it, the ancient city carries on, building, fearing, counting, praying, and watching. The machine turns above, slow and luminous, and every generation beneath it wonders whether the next sign is only a light, or the beginning of a warning. The modern year appears like a shadow on old clay. You see the number first in a place far from temples, canals, and moonlit roofs. It glows on screens, repeats in videos, spreads through comment threads, and gathers around ancient names with the strange confidence of the internet at midnight. The year 2027 is spoken as though it has been waiting inside Sumerian star records, folded into the wedges, hidden in the silence between signs. The feeling is powerful. A date gives fear a handle. Without a date, anxiety floats everywhere, drifting through weather, politics, illness, markets, and private thoughts. With a date, the mind can point. It can say, there, that is where the warning lives. This is not wisdom exactly, but it is very human. The ancient world knew this need well. It placed dread into omens, rituals, calendars, and ceremonies. Modern people place it into numbers. You sit in a quiet room. Outside, perhaps traffic moves through rain, or a fan turns slowly in the heat. The screen casts pale light across your hands. On it, someone claims that Sumerian star maps reveal a warning linked to 2027. The phrase feels ancient and immediate at once. Sumerian gives it depth. Star maps give it mystery. Warning gives it urgency. The date gives it teeth. Yet the clay remains older than the claim. No known Sumerian tablet speaks in modern calendar language about the year 2027. That is a mainstream historical fact, supported by the broad work of Assyriologists who study cuneiform collections in museums and universities such as Oxford, Yale, Chicago, and Pennsylvania. The ancient scribes used their own systems of dating tied to rulers, events, months, and local traditions. A number from the modern common calendar cannot simply be lifted from their world without translation, interpretation, and usually quite a bit of imagination. This does not end the story, it changes the question. Instead of asking whether a Sumerian scribe secretly circled 2027 for us, you begin asking why that claim feels so believable now. Why does an ancient sky record become a modern alarm? Why does clay from Mesopotamia feel more authoritative than a recent headline? Perhaps because age gives mystery a kind of gravity. A warning seems heavier when it appears to come from people who watched the heavens before most of history had learned to write itself down. You can almost see the chain forming. A real tablet is photographed. A disputed symbol is magnified. A later astronomical interpretation is added. A myth about divine beings enters the frame. A modern concern about planetary alignment, disaster, disclosure, or transformation attaches itself. Then a year appears, and the whole construction begins to feel like a message recovered from deep time. It may be fragile, but it is emotionally efficient. A quirky fringe tidbit often sits at the centre. Some modern interpreters connect Sumerian imagery to hidden planets, returning celestial bodies, or long cycles of catastrophe. They sometimes link these ideas to future dates, including 2027, through calculations that are not accepted by mainstream historians or astronomers. The claim usually depends less on one clear ancient statement and more on joining scattered symbols into a dramatic pattern. It is a collage, not a tablet reading. Still, collages can hypnotize. The mind loves joining distant points. A Sumerian seal, a star list, a flood story, a planetary cycle, a modern year. The pieces sit far apart in evidence, but close together in imagination. Once joined, they seem to have been waiting for one another. This is how narratives gain momentum. They make coincidence feel like architecture. You return, in thought, to the ancient watcher. He does not know 2027. He does not know satellites, digital clocks, or nervous people scrolling beside their beds. He knows the moon, the months, the king, the river, the gods, the expected rising of stars, and the need to report unusual signs. If he warns anyone, he warns his own world. His concern is immediate, local, royal, agricultural, ritual. The future he serves is not ours. Yet our fear reaches back and borrows his tools. That borrowing deserves tenderness. It is easy to mock modern speculation. Sometimes it invites mockery wearing ceremonial robes. But beneath the odd claims lies a sincere hunger. People sense that the world is unstable. They look for older patterns because modern explanations feel too shallow or too fast. They hope ancient people saw something we have missed. They hope the past has left instructions, or at least a warning label. A scholarly debate remains open around public interpretation of ancient astronomy and myth. Researchers at major universities have discussed how ancient texts are often transformed outside academic settings into alternative histories, prophecies, and cosmic theories. Some scholars see this as distortion. Others also recognize it as evidence that ancient civilizations still hold emotional power in modern culture. The debate asks not only what the tablets meant, but why we need them to mean more. That need is the doorway. The 2027 claim may not reveal a Sumerian prediction, but it reveals a modern condition. It shows a society surrounded by information and starved for meaning. You can know more than any ancient scribe about planets, comets, climate, genetics, and deep time, yet still feel less grounded. Knowledge has expanded. Peace has not kept up. The old tablets become anchors. Their broken surfaces feel solid compared with the flickering present. A wedge in clay seems more trustworthy than a glowing post, even when the glowing post is the one telling you what the wedge supposedly says. There is a gentle irony there, and history enjoys irony almost as much as it enjoys burying cities under sand. You breathe slowly. The room around you softens again. The claim about 2027 no longer rushes forward like a command. It settles into layers. At the bottom are real Sumerian and Mesopotamian traditions of sky watching. Above them are ancient omens, myths, star lists, flood memories, divine figures, and royal fears. Above those are later translations, museum collections, scholarly debates, popular books, speculative videos, and the restless machinery of modern attention. Somewhere near the top sits 2027. It is not carved cleanly into the oldest layer. It is placed there by modern hands, perhaps anxiously, perhaps creatively, perhaps carelessly. That does not make the whole structure meaningless. It simply means the date belongs more to our age than to theirs. It is our shadow falling across their clay. You imagine an ancient scribe watching this. Perhaps he would be confused, perhaps offended, perhaps secretly pleased that his work still frightens people after thousands of years. There is a small professional pride in that. Most paperwork does not enjoy such a long afterlife. The serious lesson remains quieter. Ancient Mesopotamian star lore teaches that humans have long believed the heavens might contain warnings. It teaches that observation and fear can grow together. It teaches that societies build rituals and explanations around uncertainty. It teaches that people under pressure search the sky for order, even when the real crisis may be on the ground. So the warning link to 2027 becomes a mirror, not a proven prophecy, not an ancient sentence, a mirror. It reflects our longing for hidden timelines, our suspicion that history has missing chapters, and our fear that signs are being ignored. It also reflects something gentler. We want continuity with the dead. We want the first watchers to speak to us. We want their clay to whisper that someone, somewhere, saw the pattern before. The screen fades in your mind. The old tablet remains. It has survived without caring what date trends around it. Its signs continue to hold their own world, full of moons, kings, rituals, grain, gods, floods, and disciplined attention. You can honour that world without forcing it to predict yours. You can listen for its warning without pretending it named your calendar. Perhaps the oldest warning is this. When fear grows large, humans turn signs into certainty too quickly. They make the sky say what the heart already suspects. The ancient scribes knew the danger of disorder, but they also knew the labour of interpretation. They copied carefully. They compared. They hesitated. The modern listener may need that hesitation most of all. The number 2027 still glows faintly. It no longer feels like a door slamming open. It feels like a question written in modern light across ancient dust. And as you sit with it, the silence around the old tablets becomes deeper, not because they confirm the warning, but because they refuse to be hurried. A seal turns slowly in lamplight. It is small enough to rest in a palm, yet it carries a whole procession of figures. A god sits enthroned. Worshippers approach. Symbols hover near the scene with the calm certainty of things that once made sense. There are lines, stars, crescent shapes, discs, robes, hands lifted in reverence, and signs of rank that the modern eye wants to seize immediately. You watch the seal roll across soft clay. Its carved surface leaves an image behind, stretched into a miniature world. The figures appear in order, as if they have stepped out of darkness for one brief ceremonial moment. Then the cylinder lifts, and the scene remains flat, fragile, and strangely alive. Ancient administration has performed its little miracle. A signature has become an artwork. A transaction has become theology. This is where many modern dreams begin. A single symbol near the seated deity is taken as a sun. Smaller dots nearby become planets. A divine scene becomes a solar system. A seal used in ritual or administrative life becomes a diagram of ancient astronomy. The conclusion feels thrilling because it seems to place impossible knowledge in the hands of people long before telescopes, space probes, and school posters of planets lined up too neatly. The image is famous in speculative circles. It has been used to argue that Sumerians knew of planets invisible to the naked eye, or that they remembered a hidden world travelling through the solar system. Some even connect this supposed planet with future warnings, cycles, and the modern date that glows so strangely in the imagination. The seal becomes not merely an object, it becomes a key, and everyone enjoys holding a key to a forbidden door. Yet keys can be cut for locks that do not exist. Mainstream scholarship identifies many ancient Mesopotamian symbols as divine emblems rather than literal astronomical charts. Researchers from institutions such as the University of Chicago, Yale, and the British Museum have studied cylinder seals within their artistic, religious, and administrative contexts. A star-shaped sign may represent divine presence, heavenly authority, or a particular god, not a technical drawing of orbital bodies. That fact does not make the seal dull. It makes it older. You must let the scene speak in its own accent. The figures do not stand in a modern observatory. They do not gather around a model of planets. They inhabit a sacred court where rank, gesture, and symbol announce relationships between divine and human power. The disk, star, and crescent belong to a visual language of gods and cosmic order. They are not labels in a science textbook, which is fortunate, because ancient gods would likely object to being reduced to captions. The seal's surface is worn. Tiny breaks disturb the lines. A figure's hand blurs into the background. A small mark that once had a clear outline has softened into ambiguity. Time has edited the picture without leaving notes. This is dangerous for interpretation. A damaged symbol invites the viewer to complete it, and the viewer usually completes it with whatever story already waits nearby. You lean closer. The supposed planet cluster sits near the main divine figure. To modern speculative eyes, it appears like a central body with smaller bodies around it. Yet Mesopotamian art often used star and rosette forms as symbols of divinity, not necessarily as literal representations of celestial mechanics. Ancient artists arranged signs for meaning, balance, and sacred recognition. They were not trying to satisfy future astronomy enthusiasts with scale accuracy, which is frankly inconsiderate of them. A quirky fringe tidbit grows from this disappointment. Some modern writers argue that the seal shows the sun surrounded by 11 bodies, proving knowledge of unseen planets and perhaps a returning celestial object. The claim is visually tempting, especially when the image is enlarged and removed from its original context. Scholars answer that the object is more plausibly a divine symbol, and that the surrounding marks do not form a reliable planetary count. The debate, if one may call it that, is less about the seal itself than about how badly we want ancient evidence to astonish us. Wanting astonishment is not a crime, it is almost a human organ. Still, the seal asks for patience. It belongs to a world where symbols carried layered meanings. A crescent could evoke the moon god, calendar power, night, and divine presence. A star could point to the heavens, a goddess, or sacred radiance. A seated figure could signal authority that was both political and cosmic. The whole scene may be about approach, blessing, rank, or legitimacy, rather than planetary warning. An open scholarly debate continues over the exact meanings of many seal images, especially when inscriptions are missing or damaged. Art historians and Assyriologists at Oxford, Harvard, and other research centres compare thousands of seals to understand patterns of style, period, workshop, and religious symbolism. Some readings remain cautious because the same sign can shift meaning across time, region, and context. Caution is not the enemy of wonder, it is the path that keeps wonder honest. You hold the seal in your imagined hand. It feels cool, smooth, and slightly heavy. Its carved grooves catch a trace of oil from the skin. This object once moved through daily life. It sealed jars, doors, bundles, and documents. It marked property, identity, trust, and authority. Someone wore it, guarded it, perhaps lost it in panic or placed it in a grave. It had a life before it became evidence. That life matters. When modern speculation tears the seal from its world, the object becomes flatter. Even while the claim becomes louder, the divine court disappears, the administrative purpose disappears, the hand that rolled it disappears, only the supposed planet remains, magnified like a jewel under feverish glass. The past is not revealed that way, it is harvested. You look again at the enthroned god. His posture is formal, contained, almost still beyond human stillness. Worshippers approach with hands raised, entering an order they did not create. This is a scene about hierarchy. It tells the viewer where power flows, from divine presence to human petition, from sacred image to earthly authority, from symbol to seal, from seal to clay, from clay to social fact. The stars in the scene belong to that flow. They may not map the heavens in a technical way, but they place the action beneath cosmic sanction. They say that what happens here is not merely human. The seal draws the everyday world into the field of divine order. A jar sealed with such an image is not only closed, it is closed under meaning. Ancient bureaucracy had better aesthetics than most modern forms, and perhaps a firmer sense of drama. The misread planet shows how easily modern fear enters ancient art. A symbol becomes a body becomes a hidden world becomes a returning threat becomes a date becomes a warning. Each step adds distance from the original object, yet each step feels connected because the human mind prefers bridges to gaps. You sense the real mystery becoming quieter. It is not that the seal proves a lost planet. It is that a tiny carved object can survive long enough to become a screen for our deepest questions. Did ancient people know something we forgot? Are symbols safer than facts because they can carry many meanings? Why does a worn disc beside a god feel more powerful than a clear denial from a scholar? Perhaps because uncertainty is fertile. It grows images, theories, warnings, and dreams. The seal is placed back on the table. Beside it lies a lump of clay, smooth and waiting. The cylinder rolls once more, and the sacred figure appear again. The repetition is almost hypnotic. Image into clay, image into clay. Authority reproduced by pressure, meaning repeated through touch. This is how civilization remembers. Not perfectly, not innocently, and not always accurately. It remembers through signs copied from signs, stories reshaped by stories, images interpreted by eyes that were never meant to see them. A cylinder seal is small, but it opens into vastness because interpretation never stands still. It wanders like a planet, crossing from temple to museum to book to screen to sleepless mind. You leave the object in its pool of lamplight. It does not confess. It does not defend itself. It does not say planet, prophecy, or warning. It offers symbols from a world where gods and stars shared a language older than our categories. The modern claim may fade around it, but the seal remains beautiful and severe. A final glint touches the carved marks. For a breath. The star sign seems alive, not as a hidden astronomical code, but as a reminder that ancient people placed heaven inside the smallest objects. They carried the cosmos on their belts, pressed it into clay, and left us to wonder whether we are reading their signs, or only tracing our own shadows across them. The museum room is quieter than any temple. You stand among glass cases, labels, soft lights, and footsteps that seem ashamed of themselves. Beyond the walls, a modern city moves with buses, phones, rainwater, traffic signals, and people carrying coffee as if it were a sacred fluid. Inside, clay tablets rest under careful lighting, holding older forms of attention. Their surfaces are broken, but their silence is not empty. A scholar bends over one of them. She does not look like a guardian of forbidden secrets. She looks tired, precise, and faintly annoyed by the stubbornness of damaged signs. Her tools are simple: photographs, transliterations, dictionaries, comparative texts, old excavation records, and the patient discipline of reading marks that were pressed by hands dead for 4,000 years. The work is not glamorous. That is how you know it is serious. Nearby, another visitor stares at a seal image. He sees the same object and feels a different hunger. Where the scholar sees context, he sees concealment. Where she sees divine iconography, he sees a hidden map. Where she sees uncertainty, he sees evidence that something has been suppressed. It is tempting, especially under museum lights, to imagine that all official labels are sleeping on top of a secret. The room holds both impulses. One impulse asks what the object meant to its makers. The other asks what the object might reveal to us now. Neither begins as foolish. Both come from the human wish to understand, but they travel in different directions. One moves slowly toward the ancient world. The other pulls the ancient world quickly toward modern fear. You walk between them. The glass reflects your face over the clay. For a moment, your features hover on top of cuneiform signs, and the image feels honest. Every reader brings a reflection. No one approaches the past without a shadow. The question is whether you notice your own face in the glass, or mistake it for the tablet. Mainstream research confirms that professional study of Sumerian and Mesopotamian texts relies on language, archaeology, material context, scribal practice, and comparison across many thousands of tablets. Universities such as Chicago, Yale, Oxford, and Pennsylvania have built generations of scholarship around these methods. The process is careful because the evidence is difficult. A single sign can be broken. A word can be rare. A tablet can be copied from an older source with errors already inside it. That makes certainty expensive. It must be earned slowly. The dreamers do not always want to wait. They point to the emotional force of the material, and sometimes they are right about that. The tablets do feel larger than ordinary documents. The star omens, flood stories, king lists, divine names, and strange sages create a world that seems to breathe beneath recorded history. The dreamer feels that breath and says, "Something more is here." The scholar may answer, "Yes, but not that." This is the quiet disagreement. Not whether the ancient world is strange. It certainly is strange. Not whether the tablets matter. They matter deeply. The disagreement concerns the kind of strangeness allowed by evidence. For the scholar, wonder must remain tied to language, context, and comparison. For the dreamer, wonder leaps across gaps, because gaps feel like invitations. A quirky fringe tidbit often enters the conversation wearing a confident smile. Some seekers claim that academic historians refuse alternative readings because those readings threaten established institutions. In this story, universities and museums become gatekeepers, hiding the true message of Sumerian star maps. The idea is dramatic, but it misunderstands scholars rather generously. Most specialists would be delighted by revolutionary evidence, provided it actually behaved like evidence. Evidence is stubborn. It does not become stronger because a theory is beautiful. It does not become weaker because a theory is boring. A clay tablet either contains a phrase, or it does not. A seal image either matches known artistic patterns, or it must be shown to differ clearly. A date either can be derived through reliable method, or it cannot. This may sound severe, but severity protects the dead from being used too casually. You hear the soft click of a display case. A curator adjusts a label. The label is short, almost painfully modest. It names a period, a material, a possible function. a place of origin, perhaps a dynasty. It does not say that the object explains the end of an age. It does not whisper about 2027. It does not even try to make eye contact. Museum labels can be disappointingly well behaved, yet the tablet itself resists being small. A star omen text may contain no modern prophecy, but it still reveals a universe where kings feared eclipses and rituals answered the sky. A flood story may not prove a single global disaster, but it still preserves the terror of water-overwhelming order. A list of ancient sages may not describe visitors from another planet, but it still expresses the unsettling belief that human knowledge came from beyond ordinary human life. The scholar beside the case understands this. Good scholarship does not drain mystery. It relocates it. The mystery is not a secret planet hidden in a seal. The mystery is that human beings built cities from mud, measured stars with naked eyes, linked heaven to kingship, and created archives so vast that we still struggle to read them. That is not a smaller wonder. It is only less convenient for thumbnails. An open scholarly debate continues over how to balance respect for ancient meaning with public fascination. Some historians worry that sensational claims distort fragile evidence and erase real cultures. Others note that popular curiosity can draw people toward ancient history, even when it begins in error. Researchers at major museums and universities often walk this narrow path, correcting false claims while trying not to extinguish the spark that brought people to the past. That spark matters. You can feel it in the room. A young student stands before a case, eyes wide, reading the tiny rows of wedges. She does not yet know the grammar. She does not know the debates about dating, sign forms, or textual transmission. She only knows that someone thousands of years ago wrote the sky into clay. That first amazement is precious. It should not be mocked. It should be guided. The dreamer and the scholar may not be enemies. They may be two halves of the same old hunger. The dreamer protects awe. The scholar protects accuracy. Awe without accuracy becomes fantasy. Accuracy without awe becomes dust in a drawer. The best historical imagination needs both, held in tension like a lamp flame cupped against wind. You move toward a reading room. Here the atmosphere changes. No dramatic lighting, no public whispering, no polished cases. There are tables, foam supports, lamps, gloves when needed, and people working through signs one line at a time. The tablets look less like relics here and more like difficult colleagues. They demand attention and offer limited cooperation. A researcher reads an omen report. The text is fragmentary. A moon sign appears. A royal danger may be implied. The line breaks. Another tablet preserves a parallel, but the wording differs. The scholar pauses. This is where responsible interpretation lives. In the pause. Not the grand claim, not the dramatic leap, but the careful silence before saying, perhaps. Perhaps is a noble word. It leaves the door open without tearing down the wall. The modern seeker often dislikes perhaps. The seeker wants a firm revelation, a date, a warning, a hidden system reconstructed at last. Yet ancient evidence often gives probabilities, not proclamations. It asks you to become comfortable with partial light. That is difficult, because partial light shows enough to awaken desire, but not enough to satisfy it. Outside the window, rain begins. It taps softly against the glass, a modern sound over ancient clay. The scholar continues reading. The visitor continues wondering. The museum continues holding objects taken from deserts, ruins, storerooms, excavations, and complicated histories of empire and collection. Even the room itself is not innocent. The past has travelled here through scholarship, politics, trade, conquest, preservation, and loss. That too is part of the debate. Who has the right to speak for these tablets? The excavator? The museum? The descendant communities of the region? The trained specialist? The storyteller? The listener who feels something move in the dark? No single answer rests easily. Ancient objects do not only raise questions about what happened long ago, they raise questions about who gets to interpret memory now. The case lights dim slightly. The clay remains visible, brown and patient, covered in signs that are both intimate and remote. The scholar does not own it. The dreamer does not own it. You do not own it. At best, each person approaches, listens, and leaves with a little more humility than they brought. The calmer debate continues in that humility. Professional readers ask for evidence. Modern seekers ask for meaning. The tablets answer neither side completely. They give enough history to correct fantasy, and enough mystery to disturb certainty. Between those gifts, the story remains alive. You stand once more before the glass. Your reflection floats over the ancient marks, then fades as you shift your head. For a breath, the tablet appears alone, free from your face, free from modern dates, free from the arguments gathered around it. It is only clay, yet not only clay. It is a surviving piece of human attention, pressed under a sky that is still above you. And the old question waits quietly. Are you discovering a hidden truth, or learning to see how carefully truth must be approached? The clay is no longer only a writing surface. It becomes a body. You feel the shift as the story turns inward, away from stars and tablets, toward the first human shape imagined in sacred earth. A riverbank lies under pale morning light. Wet clay rests where the water has withdrawn, smooth and dark, holding impressions of reeds, bird feet, and fingers. It is humble material, soft enough to receive pressure, firm enough to remember it. This is where humanity begins in Mesopotamian imagination. Not in marble, not in lightning, not in a garden of perfect leisure where everyone has excellent skin and no administrative duties. Humanity rises from mixture, need, labour, and divine intention. The old stories do not always flatter us. They suggest that humans were made because the world required workers, offerings, and someone to keep the systems running. A person may prefer a grander origin. The ancient texts are not especially concerned with modern self-esteem. They speak of gods burdened by work, divine unrest, and the creation of human beings to take up labour. The human role is practical before it is glorious. People dig canals, tend fields, prepare offerings, build temples, keep rituals, and feed the divine order through service. The air smells of wet mud and reeds. You kneel near the riverbank. Clay cools your fingertips. It clings beneath the nails. It is not dead matter. In this world, clay belongs to the deep power of river, earth, and creation. It can become a tablet, a brick, a seal impression, a bowl, a figurine, or a human form in sacred memory. Mesopotamia builds nearly everything from it, including the story of itself. Mainstream scholarship confirms that Mesopotamian creation traditions often connect humanity with labour for the gods. Studies from major institutions such as Yale, Oxford, and the University of Chicago have examined texts where human beings are fashioned to relieve divine beings from toil and sustain the cultic order. This is not a modern insult placed onto ancient belief. It is part of the structure preserved in the literature. The fact feels severe, yet it also feels honest. Ancient life was labour. Water had to be moved. Grain had to be harvested. Animals had to be managed. Bricks had to be shaped, dried, stacked, carried, repaired, and cursed under the breath with admirable regularity. Temples required constant attention. Offerings did not place themselves on altars. The gods, apparently, appreciated service, and the human back became part of cosmic architecture. You imagine the first-formed human not as a single person in a simple scene, but as a symbolic answer to a social question. Why do people work? Why does the temple demand grain? Why must humans suffer fatigue while divine powers receive incense, food, music, and praise? The story replies with unsettling calm. You were made for the task. Your labour belongs to the order of things. That is not a comforting answer. It is a powerful one. A quirky fringe tidbit grows around this theme in modern retellings. Some writers claim that the Sumerian creation of humans from clay records an ancient memory of genetic engineering by non-human visitors. In that reading, the gods become scientists, clay becomes biological material, and labour becomes a designed function. Professional historians do not accept this as the meaning of the texts. They see mythic language shaped by social realities, ritual needs, and theological imagination. Still, the fringe idea clings to one unsettling truth. The ancient stories do describe humanity as made for a purpose not entirely chosen by humans. That alone is enough to disturb the modern ear. We like to imagine ourselves as self-directed, free, luminous, and occasionally capable of assembling furniture without emotional collapse. The old texts are less flattering. They place human beings inside a system already older, larger, and more demanding than any individual life. You walk toward a temple courtyard. Workers are already moving in the morning heat. Some carry baskets of earth balanced against their hips. Some knead clay for bricks. Some lift jars of water. A scribe sits nearby, counting labour teams with the focused expression of someone turning sweat into records. The courtyard smells of straw, dust, damp clay, and human effort. This is creation made visible. Humans are shaped from clay, then spend their lives shaping clay. They become the material from which civilization builds itself. Their hands make bricks, and those bricks become temples. Their backs carry grain, and that grain becomes offering. Their voices sing hymns, and those hymns become the sound of divine service. The human body is not outside the sacred system. It is the system's most tired instrument. An open scholarly debate continues over how these creation texts should be read in relation to actual social conditions. Some researchers emphasize temple labor, agricultural organization, and the economic world of early cities. Others focus on theology, divine hierarchy, and mythic reflection on mortality. Scholars at Harvard, Oxford, and Chicago have noted that the stories can speak at several levels at once. Because ancient myth rarely agrees to remain in one lane, you feel those levels folding together. A creation myth explains ritual service. It explains social order. It explains why humans are mortal while gods endure. It explains why food moves from field to temple. It explains why life feels like duty. It may even explain why people look upward with a mixture of gratitude and resentment. The gods gave order, but order came with a workload. Perhaps this is why the stars mattered. If humans were made to serve an order beyond themselves, then the sky becomes part of that order. Lunar cycles, planetary warnings, seasonal risings, rituals, and offerings all belong to the same arrangement. The heavens signal, the priests interpret, the king responds, the workers build, plant, carry, and feed the temples. Humanity stands in the middle, made of clay, asked to keep heaven and earth connected. That is a heavy place to stand. You see a worker pause near the courtyard wall. He rubs his shoulder, looks toward the brightening sky, and exhales. Does he think of divine purpose? Perhaps not at that moment. Perhaps he thinks of bread, wages, family, heat, and whether the overseer is looking. Sacred systems are lived through ordinary bodies. Theology often arrives as sore muscles. A child nearby plays with wet clay. She presses it into a rough shape, then flattens it again. Her hands are small, quick, and delighted. No priest supervises her little act of creation. No hymn is sung. Yet the gesture echoes the larger myth with accidental tenderness. To shape clay is to imitate creation in miniature. To flatten it is to remember how easily form returns to earth. The human made of clay is fragile. Rain can soften a wall, fire can harden a tablet, a body can tire, hunger, age, and disappear. The material teaches impermanence. Unlike gods of shining permanence, humans belong to the riverbank. They rise from damp earth and return to dust. Ancient Mesopotamian stories know this deeply. They do not hide mortality. They place it at the centre and ask what service means under its shadow. The answer remains uncertain. Perhaps humans were created to labour, perhaps to maintain divine order, perhaps to give voice to praise that the gods desired, perhaps to bring consciousness into a world of cycles, fields, and stars. It is possible that the old stories preserve not one doctrine, but an argument with existence itself. Why are we here? Tired and temporary, under lights that do not die. The temple courtyard brightens. Sunlight touches the upper brickwork. A priest steps from a doorway carrying a bowl. A worker lifts another basket. The child presses her thumb into clay, leaving a mark that will vanish before noon. The city begins again, as it always must, through hands, backs, records, and rituals. Humanity's role is not declared with comfort. It is revealed through labour. Made from clay, humans become keepers of a fragile bridge. They feed gods they cannot see, obey signs they cannot fully read, and build cities that time will one day break apart. Yet in that service, something remarkable happens. The clay being learns to write. The worker becomes watcher. The servant of order becomes the one who remembers order. And somewhere, beneath the same vast sky, a human hand presses meaning into clay, proving that even a creature made for labour can leave behind a question the gods themselves do not answer. The canal path is narrow under your feet. On one side, water moves in a shallow channel, dark and slow, carrying bits of straw and the silver flicker of reflected sky. On the other, fields stretch outward under the heat, their barley bending in dry waves. The earth is cracked near the edges where water has not reached. A farmer stands ankle-deep in mud, opening a small cut in the bank with a wooden tool. The water turns. It enters the field with quiet authority, spreading through furrows that have been shaped by many hands. Nothing here feels accidental. The crop depends on this small gesture. The city depends on the crop. The temple depends on the city. The king depends on all of it continuing to look divinely approved. One worker with a muddy foot can become for us without ceremony, part of the cosmic order. That is rather unfair, yet ancient life is full of unfair arrangements wearing sacred clothing. You move along the canal and feel the sun press against your shoulders. The air tastes of dust, reeds, and warm water. Flies gather around the oxen. A boy shouts at them with great confidence and limited effect. The animals continue at their own philosophical pace, proving that civilization has always depended on creatures who do not care about deadlines. The human place in this world is not abstract. It is carried in baskets. It is bent over fields. It is counted in labour days, grain rations, wool allotments, and temple obligations. The great stories may speak of gods, sages, stars, and warnings, but daily life rests on work repeated until the body knows it better than the mind does. Dig, carry, plant, weed, harvest, grind, bake, repair, record, begin again. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm that temple and palace institutions organized large amounts of labor, goods, and agricultural production. Research from the University of Chicago, Yale, and other major centers has examined administrative tablets that list workers, rations, animals, fields, and deliveries. These records show a society where cosmic belief and economic management stood very close together, sometimes uncomfortably close. You can hear that closeness in the scribal courtyard. A worker receives a ration of barley. A scribe marks the amount. Another worker brings wool. A woman stands with a group assigned to textile labour. A supervisor watches the line with the serious expression of a man protecting order, or perhaps protecting his own position, which often looks similar from a distance. The tablets are practical. They do not pause to describe the worker's feelings. They do not tell you whether his knees ache, whether her child is ill, whether the barley ration is generous enough, or whether anyone believes the gods appreciate punctual accounting. They record quantities. They turn human effort into signs. There is a strange silence in that. Administration preserves people by reducing them. You stand near a woman grinding grain. The stone turns beneath her hands. The motion is steady, heavy, intimate. Flour gathers slowly. Her shoulders rise and fall. Around her, other women work with the rhythm of long practice, speaking in low voices, sharing fragments of gossip, complaint, instruction, and laughter. The sound of grinding stones becomes a kind of weather. A quirky fringe tidbit sometimes appears around ancient labour and divine silence. Some modern interpreters claim that Sumerian accounts of humans made to work preserve memory of a slave species created for mining by sky beings. Professional historians treat this as a modern reconstruction, not a reading supported by the ancient texts. Yet the idea grows from a real unease in the literature, where humans are indeed described as created to relieve divine burdens. The unease does not need machines. It is already there in the mud. A person can stand in a field and feel the weight of being necessary but not free. The canal must be cleared. The harvest must be gathered. The offerings must be supplied. The temple festivals must continue. The city must be fed. The gods must be honoured. The work repeats with the seasons, and the stars return overhead as if watching attendants. This is where divine silence becomes powerful. The worker may pour out effort every day and receive no personal answer from the heavens. The gods speak through omens, priests, storms, dreams, and official ritual, but not always through comfort. A person may suffer drought, debt, illness, or loss without hearing why. Ancient religion does not erase that silence. It organises life around it. You pass a brick yard near the edge of the city. Men and women mix clay with straw, pressing it into moulds, laying bricks under the sun to dry. Their hands are coated in earth. Their feet are dark with mud. The bricks will become walls, storehouses, temple platforms, ovens, drains, and rooms where other people sleep. The city is literally shaped from the same material used to imagine human creation. The scent is sharp and wet. Clay, sweat, straw, river water, and hot air merge into one heavy breath. A worker lifts a fresh brick and places it among rows of others. The movement is ordinary, yet multiplied by thousands. It becomes architecture. This is the hidden force beneath ancient splendour. Not only kings, not only gods. Repeated human motion. An open scholarly debate continues over how much ordinary workers accepted, resisted, or reshaped the religious meanings imposed by temples and palaces. Some historians emphasize institutional control through rations, obligations, and ritual authority. Others look for household agency, local devotion, informal exchange, and the quiet strategies of people living inside large systems. Scholars at Stanford, Oxford, and Pennsylvania have explored how social history can recover lives partly hidden by official records. Those hidden lives matter now. Without them, ancient Mesopotamia becomes only rulers, gods, and tablets. With them, the world fills out again. A shepherd watching a sick lamb, a brewer judging the thickness of beer, a mother tying a charm near a child's wrist, a boatman reading wind across canal water, a young scribe pretending not to make mistakes while absolutely making mistakes. These are not background figures. They are the civilization. You enter a modest house. The room is dim after the glare outside. A reed mat covers part of the floor. A low hearth gives off the smell of ash and herbs. A clay jar stands near the wall, sealed against insects and theft. Two enemies with different methods and similar confidence. Light falls through a small opening above, catching dust in the air. Here, divine order becomes domestic. A small figurine may rest near a threshold. A charm may protect a doorway. A household may honour gods connected with health, fertility, or protection. The great temple system does not consume every form of belief. People carry fear into their homes and answer it with smaller rituals. They negotiate with unseen forces at the scale of children, bread, illness, and sleep. The stars are still present. Not directly, perhaps, not in a formal omen report, but the household calendar follows the moon. Festivals shape the year. Agricultural labour follows seasonal signs. A father may look at the evening sky and judge tomorrow's work. A grandmother may remember what a certain wind means. Learned astronomy belongs to specialists, yet the sky belongs to everyone who lives beneath it. You pause by the doorway. Outside, the city's greater structures rise beyond the roofs. Temple, palace, walls, granaries, and workshops all depend on the labour gathered from households like this one. The hidden system is not only cosmic, it is social. Human beings are placed between earth and heaven, but also between authority and survival. They serve gods through institutions that require bodies, food, and time. This is why the ancient warning feels different now. A warning in the sky does not float above human life like a decorative cloud. It lands somewhere. It lands on a king who fears danger. It lands on priests who perform rituals. It lands on farmers who must adjust labour. It lands on workers whose rations may shrink if harvest fails. Cosmic anxiety becomes bread anxiety very quickly. The universe always finds the kitchen. The afternoon begins to soften. Shadows lengthen along the canal. Workers rinse tools in the water. Oxen stand with lowered heads. A child carries a bundle of reeds almost as large as himself, wobbling with heroic seriousness. The air cools by a small mercy. Somewhere, a temple drum sounds, low and distant, calling attention back toward the sacred centre. You look across the fields. The sky is wide, almost empty in daylight, but you know the stars are hidden there. They have not gone. They wait behind the blue, as labour waits behind architecture, as ordinary lives wait behind royal inscriptions, as silence waits behind prayer. The whole world feels layered. Humanity's role remains uncertain. Servant, builder, watcher, sufferer, singer, recorder, dreamer. The ancient texts may assign a purpose, but lived life exceeds the assignment. People created to serve also love, joke, remember, resist, grieve, and wonder. They make offerings, but they also make lullabies. They carry bricks, but they also carry stories. They endure divine silence, then fill that silence with human voices. The canal water moves on. It glides past fields, houses, temple walls, and sleeping animals, carrying reflections of a sky not yet visible. The city continues because people continue. Their labour does not solve the mystery. It gives the mystery a place to stand. And under the first evening star, the clay-shaped human keeps working, keeps watching, and keeps asking why the heavens remain so bright, while the gods answer so softly. The year does not end so much as turn. You feel it in the fields first, where stubble stands beneath a white sky and the soil waits for water. Then you feel it in the markets, where people argue over grain with a sharpness that belongs to uncertain seasons. Then, in the temples, where festivals gather time into ceremony, and the same songs return with different voices. Time in this world is not a line disappearing behind you. It is a wheel with mud on its rim. The heavens teach this turning. The moon thins, vanishes, returns. Venus disappears into glare, then rises again with beautiful nerve. Certain stars appear before dawn when the season shifts. The sun burns high, withdraws, and returns to its fierce path. The sky does not merely pass overhead, it repeats itself, and repetition gives ancient life both comfort and dread. You stand near a field at dawn. Mist lies low over the canal. A man checks the water gate with a stick, tapping the mud as if it might answer. Birds lift from the reeds. The horizon glows faintly, and one last star trembles above the east. It will vanish soon into daylight. but its timing has already been noticed. Nothing important disappears completely when people are trained to watch. Records confirm that Mesopotamian calendars were closely tied to lunar months, seasonal festivals, agricultural labour, and royal administration. Scholars from institutions such as Chicago, Oxford, and Yale have studied how timekeeping, omen interpretation, and religious life formed a shared structure. The calendar was not simply a device for counting days, it was a way of placing human activity inside celestial and divine rhythm. This rhythm could reassure. A festival returns, and people feel the world has not broken yet. A star rises as expected, and the season seems to have a dependable hinge. The first crescent appears, and the month begins. Rituals repeat old gestures, giving the present the comfort of inherited form. Even fear becomes bearable when placed inside a known sequence. Yet cycles also threaten. If good things return, so do bad things. Drought returns, flood returns, war returns. Tax collectors return with a loyalty no one requested. A city rises, strengthens, boasts, weakens, burns, and becomes a mound. Another city rises nearby, perhaps with better drainage and the same confidence. The stars watch each attempt with the calm of witnesses who have seen the pattern before. You walk among ruins not yet ruined. The walls around you are strong. The gates are guarded. The temple platform catches the sun. The city believes in itself, as cities must. Children play in alleys. Merchants weigh copper. Priests carry offerings. And scribes press numbers into clay. No one walking there thinks of themselves as living in a lair. They are simply alive. Future archaeologists have not yet become their most annoying descendants. Still, the cycle is already written into the ground. Mud brick is durable, but not forever. Walls crack. Floodwater undercuts foundations. Heat and rain work patiently. Invaders burn what they cannot use. New builders level old rooms and raise fresh ones above them. Over generations, a city slowly climbs on its own dead. The mound grows. Memory becomes elevation. A quirky fringe tidbit often attaches itself to these repeating rises and collapses. Some modern writers claim that ancient Mesopotamian cycles of destruction prove the existence of a hidden celestial timetable, perhaps a recurring object or cosmic force returning at long intervals. Mainstream historians explain collapse through many pressures, including climate shifts, river changes, warfare, trade disruption, disease, political instability, and exhaustion of institutions. The truth is not smaller because it has many causes. It is often more frightening. A single cause can be comforting. Many causes feel like real life. You pause near a kiln where pottery cools. The clay vessels glow dull red in the early light. A potter lifts one carefully, tapping the rim with a practiced finger. Some vessels will hold oil, beer, grain, water, or offerings. Some will break within weeks. Others may survive underground for thousands of years, becoming evidence for people with notebooks, brushes, and very strong opinions about fragments. The vessel is a cycle too. Earth becomes clay. Clay becomes pot. Pot holds food. Pot breaks. Sherds return to earth. Later hands dig them up and call them culture. The same material moves through use, damage, burial, discovery, and interpretation. Nothing is ever simply lost. It changes the form of its silence. An open scholarly debate continues over how ancient Mesopotamians understood historical repetition. Some researchers emphasize royal inscriptions that present each ruler as restoring order after chaos. Others examine myths and rituals where creation, kingship, and renewal repeat in patterned ways. Scholars at Harvard, Stanford, and Oxford have explored whether these cycles reflect theology, political messaging, environmental reality, or a deep memory of recurring crisis. The debate matters because cycles can be used. A king may claim he restores what earlier rulers failed to maintain. A priest may say a ritual renews the bond between gods and city. A scribe may place a dynasty inside a sequence that makes rule appear ordained. A community may rebuild after flood and describe rebuilding not as improvisation, but as return. The cycle gives authority to survival. You enter a festival crowd, the street is swept, though dust begins returning immediately. Because dust respects no ceremony. People carry offerings. Musicians play drums and stringed instruments. Incense rises from bowls in pale threads. The smell of roasted meat mixes with date syrup, wool, sweat, and flowers wilting bravely in the heat. A procession moves toward the temple, slow and deliberate. Here, repetition becomes beauty. The same path is walked. The same divine names are praised. The same gestures are performed before statues, altars, and doors. Children see what their parents saw. Elders hear songs that belong to their own childhood. Time folds. The city remembers itself through movement. Yet beneath celebration lies anxiety. Rituals must be done correctly because renewal is never automatic. The gods must be honoured. The calendar must be maintained. The offerings must arrive. The king must appear as protector of order. If the rite fails, people may not know exactly what will happen, but they know enough about famine, sickness, and violence to prefer not testing the matter. The stars are hidden by daylight, but not absent. The festival date depends on lunar reckoning. The sacred season depends on celestial rhythm. The procession beneath the sun still belongs to the night sky. This is how the ancient system works. The heavens do not need to be visible to govern time. They remain above the day like a thought held behind the eyes. You step away from the crowd. At the edge of the city, fields spread outward in bands of green and gold. Beyond them lies dry land, pale and open. The river bends in the distance. Somewhere far away, another city watches the same sky, honours different local gods, and believes itself central. Many centres exist under one heaven. That may be the oldest joke the stars know. Civilizations rise with confident patterns. They master water, store grain, build temples, train scribes, count months, name stars, send armies, and arrange the past into useful memory. Then pressures gather. A river shifts. Salt creeps into soil. A ruler fails. Enemies smell weakness. Trade falters. A god is said to abandon a city. The pattern loosens. What seemed eternal becomes repair work. What seemed secure becomes archaeology. Perhaps the warning is hidden here, not in one future date, but in repetition itself. Ancient records do not need to predict a particular modern year to warn you. They show how often humans confuse temporary order with permanent safety. They show how every system, even one aligned with stars and gods, must be maintained by tired people in changing landscapes. The evening comes. The festival noise lowers into scattered voices. Smoke hangs above the city. The moon, almost full, rises pale over the temple roof. Its light touches new bricks and older bricks beneath them, visible where a wall has cracked. The layers show faintly, like time peering through its own skin. Cycles written in heaven become cycles lived on earth. Creation and collapse. Flood and rebuilding. Drought and harvest. Omen and response. King and substitute. Silence and song. The pattern does not prove doom, but it denies innocence. It says that every age stands inside a turning, whether it sees the wheel or not. You watch the moon climb. It has seen the fields green and fail. It has shone on cities when they were young and on mounds after their names grew faint. It returns without hurry, carrying no explanation, only light. Beneath it, people count, plant, fear, rebuild, and call the repetition destiny. The cycle continues quietly, and in that quiet, the oldest warning becomes almost gentle. What has happened can happen again. What is built must be cared for. What is remembered may still be misunderstood. The heavens turn above the clay, and human beings, brief as lamp flames, keep trying to read the motion as meaning. The number returns, But it feels quieter now. You see 2027 not as a blazing prophecy, but as a shape drawn in modern dust. It stands at the edge of the ancient story, asking to be admitted. It wants the dignity of clay tablets, the cold beauty of stars, the seriousness of temple watchers, and the weight of old floods. It wants to become older than itself. Dates often do this. They gather fear around them. They become containers for what people cannot easily name. A future year can hold dread about climate, war, machines, sickness, social collapse, strange discoveries, and the private feeling that life is changing too quickly. Once fear enters a date, the date seems to glow. It becomes less like a number and more like a doorway. You sit beside a low lamp. The room around you is neither ancient nor entirely modern. It is a threshold space, made from memory, screen light, old clay, and your own breathing. Outside the window, the world continues with its ordinary nerve. Someone locks a door, someone starts an engine, someone checks a message and feels the tiny sting of the future arriving badly dressed. The old Sumerian material does not point cleanly to 2027. That is the steady ground. The tablets preserve omens, rituals, myths, lists, administrative records, and celestial traditions from ancient Mesopotamia. They do not provide a direct modern countdown. Scholars at universities such as Chicago, Yale, Oxford, and Pennsylvania have built careful interpretations from language and context, and that careful work does not support a simple prophecy naming this modern year. Still, the claim reveals something real. It reveals how modern minds search ancient ruins for permission to worry. That sounds slightly unkind, but it is true in a tender way. People often know they are afraid before they know what they're afraid of. An ancient warning gives fear a noble costume. It allows anxiety to speak in the voice of scribes, gods, stars, and lost civilizations. Perhaps that is why the claim travels. It does not need to be fully proven to be emotionally effective. It only needs enough ancient texture to feel plausible. A tablet, a seal, a star, a flood, a mysterious number, a scholar quoted without context, a dramatic image of a ziggurat under a red sky. There it is, the whole machinery of wonder, humming softly in the dark. You can recognize the machinery now. It is not so different from ancient omen reading, though the materials have changed. The temple watcher looked at the moon and asked what might happen to the king. The modern viewer looks at old symbols and asks what might happen to the world. Both are trying to place fear inside a readable pattern. Both are asking the darkness to become legible. A quirky fringe tidbit continues to circle the year 2027. Some modern stories connect it with hidden astronomical cycles, returning objects, or changes in human consciousness supposedly known to ancient cultures. These claims shift shape depending on the teller. They may borrow from Sumerian tablets one moment, from other traditions the next, then from science-sounding language when the mood requires a lab coat. It is a busy little caravan. The serious issue is not ridicule. The serious issue is discernment. Ancient history deserves wonder, but wonder should not be forced to carry every modern fear. The Sumerians and their successors already had their own anxieties. They feared drought, flood, divine anger, royal death, invasion, infertility, disease, and disorder. Their records are powerful because they show how one society faced uncertainty, not because they secretly scheduled our next crisis. Yet their uncertainty speaks to yours. That is where the real bridge stands. A person in the ancient Mesopotamia watching an eclipse and a person today watching alarming forecasts are separated by language, technology, religion, and time. But both feel small beneath systems too large to control. Both search for signs. Both listen for experts. Both fear that the warning may arrive too late. An open, scholarly debate continues over how ancient omen traditions shaped human behavior during crisis. Some researchers emphasize their political function, helping rulers respond to uncertainty through ritual and consultation. Others see them as intellectual systems that organised experience across generations. Still others study their emotional role, because divination can soothe fear even when it cannot remove danger. That emotional role matters deeply. A warning can paralyse, but it can also prepare. It can terrify, but it can also focus attention. The ancient omen did not always say that disaster was fixed. Often it implied that action was possible. Offerings could be made, rituals could be performed, decisions could be delayed, the city could respond. In that sense, a warning was not merely a shadow, it was a call to care. So what does 2027 reveal? Not the mind of a Sumerian scribe, not a secret planet hiding in plain sight, not a clay tablet waiting to shout across 5,000 years. It reveals the modern hunger for signs during a period of uncertainty. It reveals a world in which people feel that official explanations are too thin, and ancient mysteries are thick enough to wrap around fear. It also reveals impatience. The ancient scribes watched for years, copied for generations, and built interpretation through slow comparison. Modern speculation often wants revelation immediately, preferably in a title short enough to fit on a screen. The difference is almost comic. One world dries clay in the sun, the other refreshes a page every few seconds and calls it research. There is gentle sarcasm in that, but also pity. Fast fear is exhausting. It asks for constant attention while offering little wisdom. The ancient pace, for all its errors and terrors, reminds you to slow down. Watch carefully, compare evidence, ask who benefits from panic, ask what the object truly says, ask what your own heart is adding to the sky. You look again at the old warning system. Its deepest lesson is not that every sign predicts an event. Its lesson is that humans need ways to respond to uncertainty without losing themselves. The Mesopotamians built rituals, records, lists, prayers, and institutions. Their answers were shaped by their world. Your answers must be shaped by yours, but the need is familiar. Perhaps the warning is about attention. Not attention as panic, but attention as care. Care for water, fields, cities, memory, truth, and one another. The ancient world shows how fragile order can be when rivers shift, rulers fail, and institutions confuse their own survival with divine command. A future year becomes meaningful only if it makes people more awake, not more afraid. The lamp beside you lowers. Its flame moves across the imagined tablet, catching each wedge in a small shadow. The clay does not confirm the modern date. It does something more difficult. It asks you to hold uncertainty without turning it too quickly into certainty. It asks you to respect the past without making it perform for your fear. The number 2027 fades a little. Not gone, not mocked away, only placed where it belongs, among modern questions rather than ancient answers. It remains a marker of unease, a mirror for expectation, a reminder that every age believes it may be approaching a threshold. Perhaps every age is right, in smaller ways than it thinks. The stars outside continue without comment. They shine over old mounds, modern roofs, deserts, oceans, roads, hospitals, farms, and sleeping children. They do not arrange themselves into a single warning just because humans want clarity. They offer light, distance, rhythm, and silence. That may be enough, for in the silence, you begin to hear the real message beneath the noise. The ancient sky records do not hand you a fixed future. They show you a human habit as old as cities, to look upward when the ground feels uncertain, and to wonder whether meaning is written somewhere beyond reach. The last scribes work under a changing sky. You find them in a city that still believes in its own importance, although the walls have begun to speak differently. Cracks travel through old brickwork. Repairs show in uneven lines. A gate leans by a finger's width. In the courtyards, officials still walk with practiced authority, but their voices carry a thinness, as if they know the future is listening. The tablets are being copied again. That's how endings often look from inside. Not like thunder, not like a final trumpet. more like a tired hand making another duplicate of a text already older than the kingdom employing him. A scribe sits cross-legged near a lamp, stylus in hand, eyes narrowed at a damaged exemplar. He copies star names, omen lines, ritual instructions, and lists of meanings that have survived many rulers. The room smells of oil smoke and dust. There's also the dry scent of old clay, a smell almost like earth after it has forgotten rain. Shelves hold tablets arranged by habit, though not always by logic. Some belong to royal archives, some belong to temple schools, some are student exercises, administrative notes, or scholarly works. A few contain the sky, pressed into signs by people who refuse to let the heavens remain unrecorded. Outside, empire shifts. Armies move in places not visible from this room. Languages change their balance in markets. Gods receive new names, or old names in new mouths. Trade routes bend. Officials learn to serve different masters with impressive flexibility. A talent found wherever power changes costumes. The stars above remain steady enough to seem indifferent, which is perhaps their most unsettling quality. Mainstream history confirms that Mesopotamian scholarly traditions continued through major political transformations, including periods of Babylonian and Assyrian power, and later into eras shaped by Persian and Greek rule. Research from universities such as Chicago, Yale, Oxford, and Pennsylvania has shown that cuneiform scholarship endured for centuries, preserving astronomy, divination, mathematics, ritual knowledge, and literary tradition long after the earlier Sumerian cities had passed into memory. This endurance feels almost defiant. A city may fall, but a text can travel. A king may be forgotten, but an omen series can be recopied by someone with sore fingers. A temple may lose wealth, but a teaching tradition can survive in fragments, habits, and stubborn professional pride. The scribes become the last night watchers not because they always stand on rooftops, but because they guard an older way of reading darkness. You hear their low voices. A master dictates a line. A student repeats it, hesitates, and receives a correction sharp enough to improve both memory and posture. The master has copied these signs many times. He knows where the difficult passages lie. He knows which signs are easily confused. He knows that one careless wedge can alter meaning. In his world, accuracy is not decorative, it is duty. The younger scribe glances toward the doorway. Perhaps he wonders whether this training will matter in the world arriving beyond the walls. New rulers may favour other languages. New administrators may use different scripts. New calendars may press against old reckonings. The great machinery of cuneiform learning, so ancient and heavy, may one day slow beyond recovery. Still, the lesson continues. A tradition does not stop merely because history has become rude. A quirky fringe tidbit gathers around the final cuneiform scholars. Some modern writers imagine them as secret guardians who deliberately hid advanced star knowledge before their tradition vanished. The image is attractive, almost cinematic. A last priest sealing forbidden tablets beneath a temple floor while soldiers approach. Professional historians usually see something less theatrical and more moving. Learned communities preserving inherited knowledge as their social world slowly changed. The quieter version cuts deeper. There is no need for a hidden conspiracy when ordinary loss is already profound. Scripts can die, schools can close, ritual meanings can become obscure, libraries can burn, scatter, or sink into debris. A civilization's memory can fade not because someone destroys every trace, but because fewer people can read what remains. That's a lonely kind of ending. An open scholarly debate continues over when and how cuneiform scholarship finally disappeared from active use. Some researchers emphasize gradual decline under changing political and linguistic conditions. Others point to pockets of survival in temple contexts, especially where astronomical and ritual traditions remained valuable. Scholars at major research institutions continue studying late tablets that show old learning persisting far longer than a simple story of collapse would suggest. You stand beside the scribe as he copies a celestial text. He writes of a star's rising, a planet's position, a lunar sign, perhaps a warning tied to royal fortune. The content belongs to an old system, yet the hand is late. That contrast is haunting. The sky tradition has travelled through generations, reaching this moment when the world that understands it fully may already be thinning around the edges. The lamp trembles, a draught moves through the room, and flame shadows crawl across tablets like insects. The scribe pauses to warm his fingers. Clay dust marks his sleeve. His face is lined, not dramatically, but with the ordinary wear of work, light, and worry. He does not know whether future centuries will call him ancient. He only knows that the line must be finished. Outside, the moon rises above the city. It shines on streets where older languages mingle with newer ones. It shines on merchants who care more about exchange rates than omen theory. It shines on soldiers posted beneath foreign authority. It shines on priests maintaining rituals whose meanings may feel both eternal and endangered. The moon does not choose sides. That seems unhelpful, but consistent. The last night watchers inherit more than knowledge. They inherit responsibility for a world no longer secure. Their tablets preserve systems that once connected sky, king, temple, field, and fate. Now those connections loosen. Kingship changes form. Temples lose centrality. New intellectual traditions arrive. Greek astronomy, local traditions, imperial administration, and other ways of knowing begin to share the same historical air. The old tablets remain stubborn. They are heavy in the hand. They resist quick forgetting. Even when unread, they persist as objects. A scroll can rot. A wax board can be erased. A spoken lesson can vanish with one teacher's death. But fired or dried clay can endure burial with almost unreasonable patience. The scribes wrote for use, not for us. Yet the material has carried their world farther than they could imagine. You walk through the archive. Some tablets are stacked neatly. Others lie broken, waiting for repair or abandonment. A corner fragment contains only a few signs. A larger tablet preserves an omen series with missing lines. A student exercise repeats star names in awkward script. Together they form not a complete library of cosmic truth, but a weathered coastline of memory. The sea has taken much. The remaining stones still mark the shape. This is where the warning becomes archival. What is not copied may disappear. What is copied poorly may change. What is preserved without understanding may become vulnerable to fantasy. The last scribes do not only guard star lore from enemies, they guard it from time, neglect, misreading, and the slow erosion of context. They do not fully succeed. No one ever fully succeeds against time, but they succeed enough for you to stand here in imagination. The city grows dimmer. Evening smoke rises from houses. A bell or metal sound rings faintly from a courtyard. A cartwheel complains along a street. The ordinary world continues while great transitions gather. That is how history often moves. People eat, sweep floors, repair sandals, teach children, and argue about prices while the age itself begins to close. The scribe finishes the tablet. He smooths the edge with his thumb, leaving a faint human trace beside the signs. He sets it aside carefully. The clay will dry. Perhaps it will be stored, perhaps broken, perhaps buried beneath collapse, perhaps found by excavators who will lift it into another age, where scholars and dreamers will again argue over what the heavens meant. He looks once toward the window. The stars are appearing. He knows their names through tradition, not through ownership. He knows their paths better than most people below, yet he cannot command them. He can only watch, record, compare, and pass the record onward. In that modest act lies the dignity of the last night watchers. They do not solve the sky, they keep its questions alive. The archive settles into darkness. Clay tablets rest like sleeping animals on the shelves. The lamp lowers. The scribe's footsteps fade. Outside, empires continue their restless turning, and old calendars begin to give way to new ones. But overhead, the same lights return, patient and remote, shining on the final hands that still press heaven into clay. The sky remains unfinished. You feel this most clearly when the city has fallen silent and even the last lamps seem tired. The roofs lie flat beneath moonlight. The temple stands like a dark mountain made by human hands. The palace walls hold their heat, their secrets, and their vanished voices. Above them, the stars continue in their immense patience, unbothered by ruin, scholarship, rumour, or the small glowing fears of a later age. You stand at the edge of a buried mound. Wind moves over broken brick and dry grass. The land is quiet, but not empty. Beneath your feet are rooms collapsed into rooms, floors laid over older floors, hearth sealed under debris, tablets cracked in darkness, and footsteps pressed into dust no living person remembers. The city has become earth again. It has returned to the same material from which it rose. A shard lies near your foot. It is only a fragment, curved and pale, perhaps from a jar that once held oil, grain, beer, or water. The object carries no grand inscription. No god appears on it. No star is named. Yet it belongs to the same world as the tablets and omens, because ordinary things are the foundation of every ancient mystery. Without jars, meals, hands, and houses, no civilization has enough breath left to watch the sky. You lift the shard in your imagination. It feels cool from the night air. Its broken edge is rough. Dust gathers in the curve where liquid once rested. A person used it without knowing it would survive longer than kings. That is history's softest cruelty. The important names fade, while a broken pot waits patiently for someone with a brush and a notebook. Records confirm that Mesopotamian archaeology depends as much on ordinary material culture as on famous tablets and royal monuments. Research from institutions such as the University of Pennsylvania, Chicago, Yale, and Oxford has shown how pottery, bricks, seals, bones, seeds, and settlement layers reveal the lived world behind written texts. The stars matter, but so do kitchens. The heavens are easier to admire when someone has baked bread. This grounded truth steadies the mystery. The ancient sky records do not float alone. They rise from cities of labour, fear, ritual, trade, household devotion, and political ambition. Their warnings belong to human systems made of clay and breath. Their beauty comes not from secret perfection, but from the effort to create order while knowing order may fail. The year 2027 still hovers at the edge. It is not carved into the ancient tablets as a clean prophecy. It is not waiting in a sealed chamber with a convenient label, which is admittedly inconsiderate of the past. It belongs to modern interpretation, modern anxiety, and the restless habit of attaching present fear to ancient authority. Yet it has led you somewhere valuable. It has led you through the older question of why humans seek warnings at all. Perhaps that question is deeper than any date. Why do you look upward when the ground feels uncertain? Why do people ask ruins to speak when the present feels unreliable? Why does a tablet written for kings, rituals, or students become a mirror for people lying awake thousands of years later? The answer may be simple, though not small. You want the universe to have noticed you. You want history to have left a lamp burning. A quirky fringe tidbit lingers at this final threshold. Some modern seekers believe that lost Sumerian star maps are fragments of a broken cosmic manual, meant to be reassembled before a coming change. Scholars do not support that claim, but the image itself is revealing. A broken manual implies that the world once came with instructions. It implies that confusion is not natural, only the result of missing pages. That is a beautiful hope. It is also a dangerous one. If you believe too strongly in missing pages, you may stop reading the pages still present. The real tablets speak of observation, kingship, divine order, flood memory, creation from clay, ritual response, and the burden of uncertainty. They do not need to hide a modern countdown to be profound. They already show a civilization trying to survive beneath a sky it believed was alive with meaning. An open, scholarly debate remains over how best to describe the intellectual world of Mesopotamian skywatching. Some researchers call it divination rooted in religious practice. Others emphasize careful observation that prepared the way for later astronomy. Still others focus on the social power of experts who translated celestial events into political action. The most honest answer may allow all three. Ancient knowledge often refuses to stand in one modern category. You look across the mound again. The moonlight touches ridges where walls lie buried. A fox moves through grass and disappears behind a rise. The wind carries a dry scent of dust, thorn plants, and cooling stone. Nothing here feels like an ending. It feels like a pause so long that people mistake it for silence. The tablets remain somewhere in the story. Some rest in museum cases. Some sit in storage drawers. Some are published in careful editions. Some remain unread, broken, or still underground. Some have been lost forever, and perhaps those lost pieces trouble the imagination most. The missing tablet always seems ready to contain the answer. The surviving tablet, less obliging, asks for grammar. You smile faintly at that. The ancient world keeps its dignity by being difficult. The unfinished sky does not deny meaning. It denies possession. No single theory owns it. No single date completes it. No single seal, star list, flood story, or divine figure unlocks the whole system. The past is not a box with a hidden latch. It is a landscape walked slowly at night, where each step reveals another shape, then another shadow beyond it. You sense the hidden truth now, but softly. It is not that Sumerian star maps deliver a confirmed warning for one modern year. It is that humans have always lived between pattern and fear. The Sumerians wrote that tension into clay. Later Mesopotamian scholars expanded it into immense systems. Modern people translate it into videos, theories, calendars, and sleepless searches, different tools, same longing. The longing is not shameful. It is the mark of a creature made of clay who can still name stars. You are brief, uncertain, vulnerable to water, hunger, error, and time. Yet you also watch. You remember. You ask what came before you, what may come after you, and whether the lights overhead are only distant bodies or also ancient companions to human fear. Perhaps both can be true. The stars can be physical worlds and symbols. The tablets can be historical documents and objects of wonder. The year 2027 can be a modern anxiety and a prompt to examine older human habits. The warning can be false in one sense and revealing in another. History often speaks that way, not with simple answers, but with layered echoes. You place the shard back upon the earth. The wind moves again. Dust collects around broken brick. The moon climbs higher, thinning the shadows. Somewhere beyond sight, rivers continue their old work, carrying silt through lands that have held cities, empires, villages, graves, and fields. The world changes form, but the questions return. The sky remains open. It offers no final sentence, no sealed verdict, no certain prophecy. It offers patterns, light, distance, and a silence deep enough for every age to enter. You stand beneath it with the ancient watchers, the scribes, the workers, the kings, the scholars, and the dreamers. All of you are looking upward in different languages, and perhaps the story is not yet complete. The night softens now. The mound fades behind you, and the temple roof becomes only a dark shape against the stars. The old tablets rest where they are, no longer demanding anything. The river moves somewhere in the distance, calm and unhurried, carrying moonlight in small broken pieces. You do not need to solve every sign tonight. You do not need to choose between wonder and caution, between clay and sky, between ancient fear and modern sleep. Let the questions become lighter. Let the year, the warning, the seal, the star, and the flood drift apart like reeds on slow water. Each one has carried you for a little while. Each one can now float back into darkness. The Sumerian watcher lowers his stylus. The last lamp in the archive leans and steadies. The worker by the canal rests his hands. The child with clay beneath her fingernails closes her eyes. Above them, the constellations keep their quiet places. They shine without hurry over deserts and cities, over roofs and rivers, over your own window and the unknown windows of everyone listening in the dark. Their silence is not empty now. It is spacious. It leaves room for breath, for sleep, for the gentle, unfinished work of being human beneath an ancient sky. So let the old world settle. Let dust return to dust, clay return to clay, and fear return to its smaller shape. The night does not ask you to carry the whole mystery. It only asks you to rest inside it for a moment, softly, safely, while history continues beyond the edge of dreams. End of script. Good night.